This cold open thing, does it work, Travis?
Dude, I don't know. I'm pretty cold all the time. Well, actually, that's true. Not true. I'm hot all the time. I'm a hot man. Sweaty, hot man. Never cold.
Yeah,
Never
let's
cold.
go hot.
So maybe we should just go on the show hot.
Hey, welcome to Roast Mortem. It's that show where we put the oral in historical. Bing bong. My name is Tom.
I'm Travis.
We have guests tonight.
We do.
Do some honors, man.
From the Drink a Beer, Play a Game, we have Brian and Jim.
Yo, what's going on, everyone? Thank you guys for having us on. I know we've both been enjoying each other's, podcast, and really excited to come on here with you guys, do some deep dives, and do some drinking with y'all. Because
I'm really excited to be here. I want to see what There's always some kind of little twist with all the roasts that you guys do, friggin' Georgie's got he beats the shit out of women, or you had Alfred Krupp who's just huffing horse shit and building a house just so we can do that. So I can't wait to see what tonight brings us.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming on, guys. I was on their show a few weeks ago now. I feel like all of our friends' podcasts are just we're having an orgy of ear sounds. We've just been going on different shows. Tom was on Not for Human Consumption, I think, last week. Everyone's just
something like
floating
that.
around.
Yep.
So I love the collaboration.
Dude, those Scott Stapp stories were fucking great too.
Oh yeah. I don't know if I should have told those in hindsight. I got toasted. I got comfortably toasted. I was like a Volvo. I was just collapsing the entire time under the safety of alcohol. And it's only real in that moment. Well, but here we are. I've survived and I haven't been sued yet. So
yeah, Tom, if he sues you, you can just be like, "Hey, look, Scott, I'll cut you an album."
Yeah, he will ask me to help him before he sues.
All right, so we
style.
got a very topical subject tonight for the boys that we brought on, but most important part of the show, how's your week? Brian, how's your week going?
It's been crazy. I don't want to give any spoilers because Jim will cover part of the week that we already did this past weekend. Jim, I don't know why you look confused. Like you didn't know that you were shot out of your mother however many years ago on a certain day.
It's been a blur.
Well, I asked you specifically because I figured you might remember more of the night than,
I did. It was interesting. We did go out for Chambers' birthday, and as soon as I got there, I was sure to give him shots. And then which every moment he had a beer in his hand. I asked, "Would you like another one?" He said, "No, I'm good." I said, "Well, that one should be empty, so here's another one." So I fed him a lot. I know he was drinking all day long, but it was good. This was actually, I said, the wife and I, it was the first time we actually went out to a bar. It was just weird, just having been out to a bar. We've been in restaurants or breweries, but a legit packed bar, I haven't been in a while. Missed it. So it's nice getting back out there after so much time.
So are you guys close enough to Philly? Do you guys go out in Philly, or are you in the burbs of Philly?
So we're burbs, and I work in the city, so that was my go-to. It was happy hour every 2 weeks at least, so I was always going out in the city. I'm actually going back to work next month, so I'm specifically picking a day where it can align with going to happy hours again.
Oh, yeah.
So
You should be trying to pick a religion to get it so you don't have to go back.
I mean,
get exempt, man. That's your new job.
I know that, and there's plenty of people that apparently did such things. I legit miss just the fact of seeing people I worked with that I enjoy and the after work drinks. That's the biggest thing I liked. But
your life sounds more fun than mine.
Yeah, I'm just angry and alone most of the time.
Yeah, and don't you try to change that shit. Well, that's good though.
yeah,
You're getting what you want, and that's nice. That's what we're here for, right?
I mean, yeah, always, right? What about
Yeah.
you, Chambers?
Yeah, so what do you got? And actually, back to your point, we actually do live close enough that went back in the old either the single days or before we were serious with we're both wives and dads now, so we don't do shit anymore as far as really going out goes. But back in the day, it would be a 20-minute train ride down to the city, and then you could just get demolished, and then find some kind of way home. So in the good old days.
Jim, are you going to pretend we took the train and didn't drive unresponsibly?
Well, I mean, I was just about to get to that. But, I mean, for every one train ride we would take, it would be about 10 times we shouldn't have been driving. But things happen. You're in your early 20s.
Yeah, Tom and I are burbs boys. We totally have never. We've always took the train to Brooklyn. We never drove home.
Never.
Anyway,
Never, not once.
Yeah, no.
But yeah, no. So my week.
Why do I have all these miles on my car?
That's the drunk version of you is the alter ego. It doesn't count.
Where'd this new dent come from? But yeah, what do you call it? So yeah, it was my birthday, and I basically spent the entire goddamn time drinking. So Brian loaded me up on drinks Friday night. Then we stayed over at a friend's house and kind of did a sleepover with like a buddy from school. So he brought his kids, so all the kids could keep themselves busy. And then we were drinking the whole time. And then we get to like midnight, and he's like, "Hey, let's start doing pickleback shots." And it's like, "Oh, okay." Ooh. So then we decided to kill off the entire bottle from between midnight to like 2 a.m.
Ooh. So how's your heartburn?
That was fun. Actually, I somehow surprisingly am okay. I'm just tired. So there's this powder out there. It's called Liquid IV. I highly recommend it to all the drunks or people with problems out there. Just mix it in a water bottle, drink it before bed, and drink one when you get up in the morning, and you will be shockingly good. So outside of like straight alcohol poisoning, because I mean, I have had times where I've done that and I'm still puking the next day, but it saved my ass more times than not.
Gotta try that out. I could have used that this morning myself.
Yeah, Tom, how was your Pedialyte adventures?
Dude, who knows? I went to Maddie's house, a friend of the show, a friend of real life, real person, 3D. He had a birthday party. We played a lot of CeeLo. I came out breaking even, which is not fun if you think about it. You don't want to throw $40 in and come back with $41. That's not good. You want to lose it all or have a lot of money because then you lived. Besides that, I haven't had an eventful week other than that drinking yesterday. I feel like, I don't know. My wife is like walking around the apartment. She went out for the St. Patrick's Day thing in Huntington. I didn't go because I was too hungover. She comes back and she's like a Jacksonville student, just raving and ranting, throwing beer at me. So yeah, that's how it is now. Travis, tell me about you.
Oh man, so I went to the casino yesterday, played craps for the first time ever. You had to research when you play craps because it's a very complicated, intimidating thing when you sit down at the table. Like, what the fuck is pass? It's telling me to come. I've already came. I need to recharge. But so yeah, I played craps. I played for about 5 hours, and I went like in the middle of the day, so it was like, I think one of the best experiences because it was just these all old timers. Like, I was next to this Vietnam vet who was like, it was his birthday and he was showing off his like gold wristwatch that he got from his wife, and like he's just kind of mumbling and throwing the dice. And
that's great.
Yeah, but Tom, it was very much like you. I set my limit as $500, and I came back with like $450.
That's bullshit.
And I tipped the table a bunch.
That sucks.
Yeah. No, I had fun. I got to meet Bill, Larry, all these people that like the dealers knew that just play craps every weekend, and they're all retired.
You and the Three Stooges just like talking Vietnam stories and shit.
Wow.
So you don't just get bored at some point and just say, I'm all in. Like, I don't know if you have that in craps, but like anytime I'm like playing poker or something like that, I'll be like good, strategic for an hour and a half, and then I get too drunk and too bored, and I go, all right, every hand, I'm all in. Did that hit? Did that work? Nope. I'm
See,
gone.
I didn't do that because like my girlfriend was off doing something, so that was like kind of far away from Portland. So it's kind of like killing time. So I was in a casino and not drinking, which was also a really weird experience.
Why?
I was just drinking coffee. I was just like, I want to play craps. So I never had the all-in
fun
moment.
at all.
Yeah.
Why were you not drinking?
Because I didn't want to get hammered. You know what I mean? Like, I had to go drive like 2 hours after I went to the casino. I was just
what were we talking about before?
Details.
Yeah. You just catch the driving train. You know, the old...
Yeah, that's all.
The driving train through Washington.
Yeah, exactly. It's fine.
By the way, are you guys as jealous as Jim and I, like, of the current gen and the fact that they legit don't have to drunk drive because of Uber and shit like that?
No, I think
you're not jealous.
No, I think they're an extremely disadvantaged group of people, and in every regard.
Well, in the one where they don't potentially, not that any of us drunk, we're drinking and driving, of course, but
you do it in Forza.
That doesn't even have to happen. Yeah,
I think they're missing out on a valuable life skill. Actually, I think that's another thing we took from them.
Yeah, I also think there needs to be something that they can do to have their ability to go to Canada taken away, like having a shitty TikTok. Like you're not allowed in Canada.
Here's a good way to get yourself kicked out of Canada. When you're at the border and they say, "What are you doing here?" Say to do things we can't do in America, because that's what a buddy of ours did during a bachelor party, and then we got searched for 4 hours.
Fantastic.
They literally went, "Okay, you have to pull over here. Like you're not coming in right now."
And he's like, why do you have so many $1 bills? Like, why do you think? Like, it was a whole ordeal, and yeah.
Damn.
Let's jump into our subject. This is roast one. We got to roast someone that's dead. He also enjoyed drinking. I brought you on here for a reason. You guys like video games. You talk about video games all the time, right? Like, and you know the classics, right? So tonight we're going to be talking about a man who does not like video games. In fact, he never played a video game in his life. And it also just so happened that he was the president of a little company called Nintendo. And this was during its meteoric rise in the birth of the modern video game industry. So this man is Hiroshi Yamauchi, the most serious, terrifying, and at one point richest Japanese businessman of the 20th and 21st century.
Sounds like a hero.
Tom, I feel like you're going to relate to this guy on so many levels. Because Tom doesn't... Not that you don't play video games. Like I said, you just don't play games. You don't fuck around.
I don't fuck around at all.
Yeah.
My mantra every morning is, don't you ever fuck around, by DMX. It's what the fuck have they done? You know, all of that. That's my life. So I can't play games because then I'd be a hypocrite.
Right. Mm-hmm. Now, before we jump into this crotchety toy maker, let's jump all the way back to the beginnings of the Nintendo company in 1889. First off, what does Nintendo mean? Tom, what do you think Nintendo means?
I don't know. Rice Times.
Rice. Do you guys know what Nintendo actually means?
I know the rough I don't know the exact one, but it's something to the effect of it's like luck in sky or luck in heaven, some shit like that. It's something to do with like luck in something.
Yeah,
I know I'm butchering.
Yeah,
it.
Strangely enough, Nintendo roughly. I mean, it's translating from Japanese. There's multiple meanings of things, but roughly it means leave luck to heaven, which I feel like is very kind of. I don't know, culty?
Yeah, I remember hearing that before. That's why I said luck. I was like, luck, heaven.
Yeah.
I don't know what the hell that means.
It could be also translated to the Temple of Free Hanafuda, which, if you don't know what Hanafuda is what Nintendo used to make, Hanafuna cards or flower cards, which are cards that are used in a game called Koi Koi. Now, I don't know how to play Koi Koi, so I went on YouTube. I'm like, Koi Koi, Hanafuna cards. And then I found this, like, really, I don't know the name of the YouTuber, but it's just like this really sad YouTuber who's explaining how to play Koi Koi to his Mario Piranha Plant and, like, a statue of Mario. And he's like, well, there's 12 suits, and it's kind of like Texas Hold'em. And then it's also kind of like, you know, in, like, Mario Brothers 3, I think it's 3, where it's in a bunch of games where there's, like, all the cards flip down and you flip them up and you got to match them. Right, yeah.
So it's like that?
It's like that and Texas Hold'em. It's a very strange game. And, like, all the cards, there's no, like, numerical values on them. It's like you just need to know that, like, oh, the crane hangs out in the valley, and I got to collect all the crane hanging out on the valley cards.
So it's like tarot cards.
Yeah, sort of. Except for Japanese people and not, like, spooky 30-year-old women.
Those things often have the same temperament.
I'm glad when you said Hanafuda, because at first I heard Futa, thinking of Futanari, and I was like, ooh, this is taking a turn. What happened to the old Nintendo? Anyone doesn't know that. That's like a deep dive of like hentai culture. It's just pure degeneracy.
Ooh, all right. That's the degeneracy.
There's one guy out there right now going, yes!
Yeah!
That's you when you listen to this later, Jim. With your
As I'm watching it.
Those 3D renderings are getting better and better.
You guys ever see Laura Croft's tits? Oh my God, baby boy, baby girl, baby boy. So, I'm already getting the burps. You guys, I bought these like special beers for you guys because I know you're into like your craft beers. So I'm drinking like weird pilsners.
I was gonna say I'm trying to eyeball it as you pick it up and trying to figure out what you're drinking.
It's got this bear man on it. It's from Mount Hood, which is right around the corner. So in 1889 in Kyoto, Nintendo was founded by a guy named Fusayaro Yamauchi. And as I mentioned, Nintendo made these Hanafuda cards. Eventually, they would start making Western playing cards in 1902. Now, we talked about it with the Krups dynasty, and it's not a normal thing in Western society, but in Japan, it's quite normal for a male, like a son-in-law, to take the father's last name of like their daughter if they come from a successful or established family. So this guy Fukuyaro, he only had daughters. So like there would have been no way to continue the Yamauchi line. So he gives his son Sekiro Kanada the Yamauchi name. So he takes over as like the heir to this Nintendo
It's like
card.
He was the
playing
Gustav
business.
Krupp of Nintendo.
It's a form of bureaucratic cucking.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought when you were saying. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's a bitch move right there. But yeah.
I'm going to be someone else from now on. My new dad said I should. Oh, boy.
If your new dad's a lot richer than your old dad, though, is it that
I don't
bad?
have to take the subway anymore. I get a used Honda.
Yeah, you might be pumping my daughter, but you have my last name, bitch.
My God.
It's built into the contract.
So by the time this Fusayaro guy, the guy who established Nintendo, was ready to retire in 1929, Nintendo was the largest playing card company in Japan, and Sekiro takes over president. And he keeps going up from there. Now the problem was that Sekiro and his wife Tay had no male heirs either. So again, they're all daughters. So again, there's another guy that comes into the family, and he takes the surname Yamauchi. So Sekirio's daughter Kimmy marries. Also, you guys get a special episode where you guys get a special episode of Roast Mortem where Travis tries to pronounce another language name.
I'm so glad you're the one trying to pull these off. I've been like Saka Hamba
You'd be canceled
Yeah,
by the end,
yeah.
Jim.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, even the Belgian one with Hergé, I was calling him Herge half the episode.
Just come up with a numeric system. Mickey Rooney 1, Mickey Rooney 2.
Yeah.
Well, from the sounds of it, it sounded like Cuck 1, Cuck 3, Cuck 5.
Use the cuck system.
Yeah. So Kimmy marries Mickey Rooney 1. And so he comes Mickey Rooney Yamauchi. Kimmy and Mickey Rooney 1 blast out our subject, Hiroshi Yamauchi, on November 7th, 1927. And that's the guy that we're going to be roasting today.
Cool. Well, he sounds like he comes from a great line of tradition and weirdness.
Everything about this guy, as I was researching him, I'm like, he's kind of like a subtle Bond villain. Like, he just comes off, and especially how he looks, I'm like, he just, he's not, I mean, you already pointed out, doesn't like video games. He's not a fun guy. He's just a business guy. And, I kind of started what Nintendo still does, which is doesn't give a shit about his actual fan base or his customers. He's like, no, you idiots are going to listen to what I'm saying. And
our little baby boy Hiroshi is going to grow up into a guy that just cares about himself, pretty much. Himself, the game of Go, and whiskey. That's it.
I mean, that's good.
I respect that part.
Yeah, Tom's like, how do I become this guy? Tom, you have to pick up more like classic board games. I feel like because you don't play games, you got to start playing chess or backgammon or something old. You know?
Yeah, I think you're right. I need to fill that void.
Yeah.
I mean, in all sincerity, I do fuck around sometimes. And I play good games. I play, my Tony Hawks, my Tony Hawk remasters, my Tony Hawk Undergrounds, things of that nature. I could see how there's a limited brain capacity happening when you're playing a Tony Hawk versus like a chess. You know what I'm saying? Do I sound insane right now?
Are you telling me that there's no like international Tony Hawk Grand Wizards?
I'm just saying Tony Hawk is very emotional. You feel that game. You're not thinking about that game.
Well,
you're going like in your head, and then you just play the game and drool.
And well, you also have to collect Tony Hawk sex tapes that just happen to be on top of cables and things like that.
He knows where to leave them.
Yeah. All right, so Hiroshi.
All right, sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, Hiroshi's dad, Mickey Rooney 2 or 1, I forgot what we were calling him. Mickey Rooney 1. This guy had a lot to gain from marrying into this family. I mean, Nintendo was one of the biggest companies in Japan. This is pre-war Japan. Gambling's big in Japan. It still is. They have pachinko machines. Japanese love gambling. Americans love gambling too.
All the playing cards you could ever want.
So
they're not walking away breaking even.
Yeah,
I'll tell you that.
It's commitment. it's like financial seppuku every weekend.
So Hiroshi's dad has a lot to gain to be in this family. But for whatever reason, when Hiroshi is 5, he just runs away from his wife and son. Just like, fuck that, I'm leaving. Bye, later.
Smart.
Now, remember, this is Japan. This is also pre-war Japan. It's all about honor and like respect and like, when someone dishonors your family, like anything bad that anyone does is a reflection on you. It could be like your neighbor 8 doors down, like, I don't know, got caught in an affair and like you're personally dishonored because you live on the same street as them. Like that type of shit. His mother, Kimmy, is like disgraced. She has to file for a divorce. Kimmy moves in with her sister and leaves little Hiroshi with her parents, the guys that are currently running Nintendo. Now, they're like, this boy needs a powerful, Japanese businessman in his life. He needs to learn our values and all this shit. And especially because his dad was like a deadbeat and ran off. He's like, we have to groom this young little boy to become the Nintendo.
Of course. You're not going to waste any time.
And now he's got a chip on his shoulder.
Yeah.
So life under his strict grandparents was very tough on Hiroshi. He became that like typical rich kid that like likes to rebel, grew up into being like a playboy. He's wearing like a lot of expensive clothes. One of the big things was he wore his hair swept down, which was not a thing you did in Japan. Like a little fringe, right? And
inspiration for all those animes.
Yeah.
Those bad boys with the lazy eyes they're covering up. It's cool though.
And also, I feel like we've talked about, whenever we talk about a dickhead Asian person on the show, like we did Mock Duck, Hiroshi grew his fingernails out very long and kept them manicured. Something about being a badass in Japan and having long fingernails. Like, who's the guy in Big Trouble from Little China? Lindsay Lohan.
Oh, yep. Lopan. That's right. Did that move at the end where he crossed them with his pinkies?
It's fancy. I mean, why do you think all those black ladies do it? It looks sick.
Yeah.
Like Flojo.
Yeah.
Cardi B is...
I can't do it. I'm typing all the time, but if you can, do it.
So he's got these long fingernails. He's wearing his hair swept down. Obviously, his grandparents that he's living with are not very happy about these looks and stuff. But let's do a little bit of math here. So Hiroshi was born in 1927, and when he turns 14, he could have been drafted into the Japanese army during World War II, right? If you're going to be born into a time period, 1927 in Japan, not a great period to be born into.
Better times.
he's very patriotic. I guess that was kind of seen as somewhat rebellious because he was born into this business class. He's like, I want to go fight, you know. But his mom, Kimmy, was having none of it. She's like, forbid him to join the military. He's like, you're not fighting no Americans. You're going to go to school. So sends him to preparatory school right before the war starts in 1940, the war with Japan. And Grandpa was really hoping that he'd get a law degree or an engineering degree. But of course, with World War II happening, Kyoto was constantly being, you know, air raided. So like the air raid sirens were going off and everyone would go hide in these bomb shelters. An interesting thing was that Hiroshi's grandma refused to go into the shelter and just did her normal day shit every day. Like the air raid sirens would be going off and she'd be like doing the flowers and, you know.
Yeah.
Just didn't give a shit.
Going to the 4'7" hunchback lady, just going, fuck you, just going about her business.
Yeah.
Nintendo, like most companies, took a hit during the war, but as we know, Japan rebounds really quickly. We went into that, I think it was like our 14th episode or something when we did Douglas MacArthur and his whole like rebuilding back of Japan. You shouldn't listen to that episode because we probably did a terrible job.
We did a bad job. I'll just say it. Not probably.
No way, all of his all of his podcasters know that pain of like your first 50 episodes. You go back and you're just like, this is unlistenable.
Hiroshi enrolls in this university, Waseda University, in 1945 after the war is over. He studies law just like his grandfather wanted. And shortly after going to school, Hiroshi marries a woman named Mikado Inaba. And so I fucked this up by calling him Mickey Rooney, but Inaba was also the last name of his father. So are we talking about some cousin touching here?
Maybe.
Sounds like it could.
Are we gonna hit that? We're gonna hit that roast Morton bell?
What?
Now it's getting spicy.
Unfortunately, hate to break it to you, this was not cousin touching because Mikado came from a like very high-ranking samurai lineage that could trace their family back like centuries and centuries. So, and Hiroshi's dad was just like some dude that probably had a big dick and banged his wife. You know, they banged some chick from Nintendo.
Awesome.
Yeah.
The ultimate weapon.
Yeah.
Goes a long way.
Speaking of Hiroshi's dad, deadbeat dad, he becomes sick around this time, like post-war, and tries to contact Hiroshi. And Hiroshi just straight up refuses to acknowledge him. He's like, I don't care if you're sick. Go fuck yourself.
He should. With the amount of shame that comes from dad leaving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Why not? Get out of here. Get out of here. Dad doesn't want to talk to you.
Yeah. Yeah, he left.
Grandma and Grandpa were fun. They weren't.
Yeah, left him when he was 5. It's like you don't know shit.
Yeah. So
there might be more shame involved in picking that dialogue up again.
Maybe.
No, hey son, how you been? I've been out there farming.
It's that whole cuck thing coming back again, where like if you take him back at that point after such dishonor, then you're the cuck.
Yeah,
for bringing him back into the fold.
Look, I know you're like in your 20s almost, but I figured we'd have to talk. Are you like cranking your pecker yet? What's happening?
I'm thinking that he made the mistake in sending like a Hallmark card and not like a Nintendo card. You know, he's like, "How dare you do your son under to me?" So this is kind of where the picture of Hiroshi right now. We've got like a little rebellious boy, right? Like he's a playboy. He's got his hair swept down, but these kind of interactions with his dad, at least in the book that I was reading, what I'll get into, is where Hiroshi got his cold, stern businessman type of mentality. The guy just could like shut people off, shut down, and like once you fucked with him, like you're done. You know what I mean? Like, it's over. Like, if you fucked me, like, forget it. I'm writing you out of everything.
Would you say he had a don't fuck around attitude?
Yeah. He's like, don't you ever fuck around. Now, don't you ever fuck around.
This had to make it very Western friendly with many DMX references. I keep this up.
just to tie up his dad altogether, because he's not really going to come into play. His dad dies in his late 20s, and Hiroshi did attend his funeral. And when he did attend the funeral, he met his half-sisters and his aunts were like, "You look exactly like your father." And this was like the only time that Hiroshi actually broke from this like stone-faced man, and he was said to have like actually openly cried. And he said one of the biggest regrets of his life was not reconciling with his father. But this experience would make him even more hard and jaded as Nintendo grew.
I see it as an anime scene.
Right?
No problems.
Yeah. There's rain falling.
Yep. The dripping
You have that
silhouettes.
music building in the background.
There's a lot of like big
yeah,
anime moments in the script. Like you can picture it. It's like something out of Cowboy Bebop.
Well, it's because most animes are based on real events.
Yeah. Like Girls und Panzer. With anime girls riding on a Panzer that Krupp built. So jumping back into it, when Hiroshi was 21, his grandfather had a stroke but lived. So his grandfather was like, all right, we need to prepare Hiroshi because like I'm probably not going to make it around for that much longer. He's got to be the president of Nintendo. And so they went to Hiroshi like, hey, do you want to be president of Nintendo? Like he has to at least say yes. You know what I mean? Like you can't like force the kid to do it. And Hiroshi was like, I'll take over the company under one condition. He said that I will be the only member of the family working at Nintendo. I don't want ever to be questioned that I am like the heir to Nintendo. Because there was like other family members working at Nintendo and like it was like a kind of a family run business. And he's like, fuck, they have to go in order for me to work here.
Wouldn't that be just a very strong no then? All right, we'll just have someone else do it because, it's just a company.
Yeah, also, like...
Someone who will make a family reunion awkward.
Yeah, I heard that too, and I'm like, shit, I don't know how many others were actually working in the company at that time. Like, if it's 2 guys and they were shitheads, it's like, okay. But if it's like 14 people and they're head of development, it's like...
Right. So I think there were a few, but the one big one, I guess, was Hiroshi's cousin. I think he was pretty high up the ladder at the company. And so his grandfather was not very happy that, he had to fire, Hiroshi's cousin. But he's like, if I don't fire him, then he's not going to take the position. So in 1947, Hiroshi's grandfather fires this cousin, and Hiroshi becomes the 3rd president of Nintendo.
This is dumb. Shouldn't have done that.
Because it's like they're also taking a huge gamble. Somebody who's already working there versus is this also essentially his first like legit big job at that point? Because you said he's late 20s at that point,
no.
right?
So I kind of jumped forward a little bit when I talked about his dad dying.
Okay.
He's like, I think, hold on, wait. So he's around like 23, 24, taking over this massive company.
Yeah. Long fingernails, nails, hair down, asshole. You're just giving it to him. Like, that's... Whew.
Dude, when I was 24, I was still passing out in like public bathrooms at like random bar nights and shit like that. Like, oh, here, you're a multimillionaire now. You run this company. There's a lot in the name in that fucking culture. Holy
exactly.
Shit.
Yeah.
So Hiroshi, this is like we're entering like the 50s. Hiroshi kind of kept Nintendo in its lane. They're mainly producing playing cards. He did broker a licensing agreement with Walt Disney to make Walt Disney Hanafuna cards, which I think probably are worth like lots of money now if you have them. If you just so happen to be cleaning out your shoe boxes and find some Nintendo Hanafuna cards, like might want to get them rated. Is that what the Pokemon kids do? Yeah,
Graded.
Yep.
Send them over to WADA, get that shit, let them put a number on there. It doesn't matter what the number is. All of a sudden, your value goes up by 10,000%.
But these Nintendo cards sold like hotcakes. I think it sold 600,000 packs in like the first like 3 months or something like that. Like just to have some Disney like set of Hanafuna, which is also really weird because like I said, like there's 12 suits of cards. And they're all just like very cryptic. Like it's like the crane over the river, and then like I don't know, the mountains and the juniper berries or whatever. But like, it's the same thing with like Mickey Mouse. Like the Mickey Mouse shits in the creek. Like we have that set, and like Goofy stomping on a toad. Like,
here's Donald Duck playing Russian roulette for fun.
yeah.
Something like that. It's real. I guess they didn't have dark stuff like that in Japan. Everything was happy.
Yeah.
Before we bombed them.
we ruined everything in one fell swoop. Mm-hmm. All happiness, all joy.
Tom, I think we need to go back into Japanese history a little bit for you, because I remember when we were talking, Connor and I were like, "You haven't heard of the rape of Nanking?" Japanese people were not very happy before we bombed them.
I don't know about that. They seemed fine. I read that story that circulated Reddit about the guy who was in both cities when they were bombed because he didn't want to be late for work or something. Whoa, look how happy he is. He's doing it for his family. That's great.
All right, so something that I always thought was really interesting and like funny about Japanese companies is that they love to diversify their products. Like, and usually they don't end up in America, but like you have like weird shit like, you know, Mitsubishi making like toasters or like toilet paper or some shit, or like owning like pachinko machines or some, you know.
Yeah. I mean, like, look at Yamaha. That's like the high-end speakers and jet skis.
Yeah, right?
Why not?
It's just like they just have the shotgun approach, which I feel like would just be really funny if they did that in the States. It's like, I don't know, the Budweiser, you know, the Budweiser Boeing 57, the Budweiser 57, right?
Yeah.
If we did that, we wouldn't have lost Zenith.
Good old Zenith.
They would have covered.
If Zenith just made a gun, they would still be here and kings of the industry.
Exactly. Yeah. They would be here. Maybe not making tube TVs anymore, but they'd be here in our lives. But they chose to cheap out.
So during the 60s, Hiroshi takes the Nintendo company into this like smorgasbord route of like just doing whatever with the company. So his first strange product that was like breaking away from cards was individually portioned instant rice. I don't really know exactly. Like, I don't know if it was little sacks of rice and you just like, I don't know, throw it in the oven or something. Like, that didn't work. I don't want to buy Nintendo rice. This is weird.
You know, you have a culture where they just rice everything. Like, they know how many rice they're going to eat. Like, I know Americans are terrible with rice. You know, always make too much or not enough and burn it every single time. Over there, and in countries actually make the shit, it's like, yeah, I could see how many rice is going to need.
Right. Americans love their Uncle Ben's, because how much rice is an American going to eat? You know what I mean? Instant rice is great. But like you're saying, like every house has a rice cooker in Japan.
This is part of their culture. You don't need someone to separate it for you.
I now really want to go on eBay and see if I can buy some fucking Nintendo rice. If it's actually out there, I'll eat it. That can be a Patreon thing.
So Nintendo opened up a subsidiary called Daya, which was a taxi cab company. And that came to a crashing end when Hiroshi had like a bitter battle with the taxi unions. And he's just like, unions, hate those. Fuck you. We're done with this. No more taxis.
So you're telling me Hiroshi here cooks with gas?
Yeah.
He's trying to get shit done.
Now, you know, I mentioned this guy didn't fuck around. He's very cold. I'm going to talk about a passion project that Hiroshi had. Nintendo opened up love hotels, which were hotels you paid per hour in Kyoto. So
nice.
Yep. Also known as whorehouses. I was glad you hit on this. I was like, I did not know that. Before researching this, I was like, wow, okay. That's a little bit interesting history right there.
I want to think that there's at least one still around, but it's like all branded now. Like you go into one room, it's a Donkey Kong room, the other room's a Mario room. You're banging under Princess
Do you
Peach.
think they'd collab with like a Bad Dragon for the Yoshi room?
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, imagine pitching that to like the zoning boards and stuff when you're building. It's a game room. They're games for hours. An hour a game. Get it? Come in. Play some Donkey Kong.
You plug the controller in. I don't tell you where. You just plug it in.
Exactly. You have 1 hour to beat the high score. Oh, shit. I'm not going to cut that out. I decided now.
I was going to say, we're starting the accents now.
You don't have to. Don't feel the pressure unless you want to dive in.
Jim, I'm waiting for you to do the Cartman the whole time he's talking.
As long as it's an Eastern Cartman, then he's cooking.
The lacking discipline.
I was waiting for the perfect time for that.
Yeah, so Nintendo Whorehouse. Love it. Love it. Love it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I say this is a passion project because Hiroshi was hanging his Donkey Kong out for all the ladies of Kyoto. Right? We don't have too many details because, again, the Japanese are very discreet and cagey about a lot of this stuff. But Hiroshi seemed to be a player, and he was getting around, not very true to his wife. Maybe there's more details in Japan, because like I found there wasn't a lot of like English books on this guy. There was mainly like one or two. So maybe that information's out there, but I don't speak Japanese. So
Was he kind of like a Lyndon B. Johnson where he'd have a business meeting and just like sit there with his dick out the whole time? Because he's just like rocking a massive mahogany.
yeah.
that's a power play that I feel like he totally would be about, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, in 1969, Hiroshi created a division he creatively named Games.
1969 or 59?
Yeah, 1969.
Okay. Games,
Yeah, Yeah, Games. Now, enter one of Nintendo's biggest stars and biggest stars in the video game industry in general, Gunpei Kyoko. There we go. Gunpei.
Gunpei. Yeah, I remember Gunpei playing as him in Tony Hawk 3.
Yeah.
Tony, Bam Margera, Gunpei.
Yep.
Yeah. Gunpei created the Game Boy, along with many other Nintendo classics. Now, actually, Gunpei was part of the maintenance team in Nintendo who repaired, the presses that made these Hanafuna cards. And then one day he's just called up to Hiroshi's office and he's like, you're going to join this R&D team. You got to make me games. Imagine just being basically a janitor at a job or a maintenance dude. And then the head boss is like, you know what? You're going to make this business a lot of money.
Imagine a Japanese remake of UHF where Stanley Spadowski, which we'd have to rebrand. I don't know. I haven't done my market research, but you get it. He goes from the mop-wielding moron to the TV genius. Is this Gunpei?
Yeah, that's Gunpei.
Awesome. My mom. I just watched that recently. Fucking love that.
Right. So he asked Hiroshi, he's like, well, what do I make? He's like, Hiroshi's like, you have to make something big for Nintendo to sell this Christmas. And Gunpei's like, what do I make? And Hiroshi just said, something great. Let's do it.
Perfect direction.
Yeah. So the first toy that Gunpei created was something called the Ultra Hand, which basically was one of those, I
have one of those too.
Yeah.
Classic adult toy.
Damn it.
Yeah, no, the Ultra Hand was, one of those grabbers that old people use to pick up shit? It's kind of like that. You squeeze it and the hand comes out and grabs something.
I mean,
it's like Inspector Gadget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was he the first?
So that's what they called
that?
fun in post-nuke Japan, huh?
Yeah, right.
Well, my knees got blown off in the war, so I'm going to need to be reaching that rice.
Yep.
But look at this.
Yeah. But Travis, are you trying to imply that the Ultra Hand isn't great?
Dude, I'm telling you, the Ultra Hand, I think, was one of the best Nintendo games out there.
Awesome.
Fuck Smash Brothers. I just have an Ultra Hand.
It's fucking great. Makes me happy.
I love looking at all the little ads and commercials they had for it too. The Japanese family sitting around and the little kid is grabbing shit off the top of the bookshelves and the little girl's just randomly passing her dad a red ball. It's no, come on.
Hey, that was a pretty honorable pickup, son.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. He drops it, he can't eat for a week.
How quickly was the Ultra Hand removed when, the son is grabbing your chopsticks off the table and shit? Give me that fucking thing.
Yeah.
It's all right in the garbage. So from there, Nintendo would release a whole line of Ultra toys. The Ultra Machine pitched baseballs indoors. I'm assuming these baseballs were soft. 'Cause,
I imagine that commercial. They have perfect for Kevin McAllister.
Every broken window, Hiroshi, not again.
Nintendo joined up. They were also opening window business. Right?
So what you got to do is you got to create a market. Okay, it's not just entering one.
Oh, Tommy, you want to hear some high tech shit here?
I love
the Ultra Scope, which was basically a periscope that could see around corners. Real goofy and gaggy shit.
Nice.
Ooh.
It's really sick.
Now, you could use a periscope for some risque hentai set pieces, right? Like, oh my God,
I was going to say,
see around the corner, right?
Hence the culture now.
Right, but now we're going to talk about a real risque game that Gunpei created, and this was the Love Tester. So basically, two kids would hold hands and then hold this thing. You know, when it creates one of those electro currents and the light lights up? Right, you did that in school. It was basically that. Now, the thing was holding hands in Japan was very taboo. So this was seen as like, oh.
I can half confirm that. I went on a date with a Chinese woman, and she wouldn't hold my hand, and I left. She said to me in all sincerity, she said to me when I went to grab her hand, she goes, "I don't like PDAs." And I was like, what the fuck is that? Public displays of affection. All right. See, bitch.
I don't like Palm Pilots.
No, you don't want to
just throw their phone in the fucking pond.
Yeah, what? You don't want to make out with a Jew?
Damn racist.
Have to spin that around. Oh, what a bad date. My God. But anyway.
She didn't want to sound racist. She just wanted to be, she was like, she walked in and she's like, oh no, one of these. I don't hold hands. I don't do any of this.
Yeah, exactly. Just you up close.
By the way, I swear, when I was looking up these items that we're talking about and the Love Tester, I thought it looked like the Church of Scientology meter.
Oh, it does. It does look like one of those. I mean, probably the same thing. They probably bought it from Nintendo.
Yeah, they're like, oh, I could just put different knobs, and there we go.
Yep. It's almost like if you were holding, like two people were holding one controller, and there's like one little knob sticking out from each side, right?
It's basically the Wiimote, or the Switch remotes now.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Congratulations, you are fertile.
Yeah.
Now, Hiroshi said that the only way that this risque love tester would work in America is if the kids kissed. Like, it would not work unless if these kids were smooching.
Yeah. Because Americans' hands are so dry.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make contact the right way.
Now, this is something that I found the most interesting about, and also the Love Hotels is probably the biggest thing. But I didn't know this, that apparently Nintendo's first big break would be kind of an amusement park arcade staple that you wouldn't think of. So have you guys been to the Jersey Shore? You guys are close to Jersey, right? Love the Jersey Shore, right? You ever go, and it's not exclusive to the Jersey Shore, but they have those light gun machines where like it's like a shooting gallery and you hit something and then like it explodes or it falls over and like it's all these little targets.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Nintendo invented that tech. It was called the Nintendo Beam Gun. So Nintendo set up this whole line of shooting ranges in Japan. It was actually more popular than bowling at a time, to go to these shooting ranges where you shoot ducks and cans and shit and they fall over.
That's more popular than bowling?
It was in the 70s. Now I'm sure bowling is...
I'm going to assume that their max bowl over there was like 8 pounds then. A bunch of bitches.
Well, as you said, Tom,
they are small people.
Their hands are too wet. They're slipping with the balls. He can't hold on to the shit.
So much shame. A gutter. Imagine a gutter ball for that. You have to tell your family,
Everyone just plays with the bumpers even when they're 50, even the competitive leagues, just to not have that dishonor.
I mean,
oh yeah. Oh, if you have those bumpers up, you're basically you're gonna get killed.
Oh yeah.
And we're talking about a country that need an ultra hand. You need an extender to grab balls off a goddamn bookshelf. So they can't be bowling. Come on.
Yeah, you put the gutters down and just like one of those tiny Japanese knives come out of the fucking bowling thing.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right. Well, that's another disappointing thing to know about Japan. Continue.
I always loved those things when I was a kid. You guys like those? I mean, I don't know. Hiroshi wanted more from his games department. I'm not even talking about video games yet. But as the 1970s rolled on, the first wave of video game consoles took the world by storm. And, this is like the Atari with Pong. You've got Magnavox, Commodores, all those boys. All like the shit where you're like, what am I looking at? I don't understand. There's just lights flashing, and everyone's like, oh, my God.
I see 4 blocks and 3 colors. This is real life.
Yeah, hold on. Before we roll into any more of this, Brian, Jim, what are your oldest consoles? Like, what are your experiences on these kind of ancient pieces of hardware? Anything?
I was the NES. That was my first console. I actually learned about the Atari much later because nobody I knew except for my one cousin had one. And I remember distinctly being 7 or 8, having the NES, and then seeing that, and I was like, "Why would you ever play that when you could play this?" Like there was such a delta. But yeah, the NES was my starting point.
Right now,
sure.
I have an Atari 2600 hooked up. I have a ColecoVision hooked up. I have a random, it's almost like an old Pong console, but it's like a breakout and pinball kind of clone system. I have some Magnavox Odyssey 2 games just sitting there. I don't have a console, but I have some of those games sitting over there. So, I grew up, my brother's 11 years older than me, so he had a Genesis. So they saw that I really like video games, so they're like, oh, we have an Atari in the attic. So they brought it down. So if you want to get a kid into Atari, you have to, do it when their heads are all soft and mushy. So they can look at a game that's Frog Bog or, Yar's Revenge, and they can still think it's fun and shit like that. So then you go up with the nostalgia for it. Because I can tell you, as, a guy with, a gaming YouTube page, I've done videos on Atari and shit like that, and not our videos ever get huge numbers anyway, but even by our standards, those were just no one cares except for a very niche audience.
Well, shit, every kid today, they're gonna first see shit on phones and iPads and tablets, which blow old systems out of the water.
Do you mean Raid Shadow Legends? Do you mean our kids are gonna see that before they get to see anything that people had to work on?
Even though it's kind of come full circle because Minecraft kind of just looks like a fancier version of an Atari game. It's all blocks.
It's true. Yeah. Do you think that these kids, when these games came out, the dreaded E.T., do you think that they were because we grew up, we're all roughly the same age here, but we grew up in a very evolutionary part of video games. We went from the whole bit generation that we're going to go into. Do you think there was kids in the 70s that were like, this looks so real, it's never going to get any more real than that? Because I feel when Ocarina or something came out my age, I was like, this is so real, and it's you look at it now, you're like, is that supposed to be a guy? What is that, a potato?
What? Yeah. I mean, to Tom's point and to what we've been saying, you figure 70s, 60s, before that, what else do kids do? They fucking play with Ultra Arms, stick on a ball. Yeah. Seeing something electronic that you were interacting with probably just blew their minds. I don't think it was necessarily this looks real. I think it was holy shit, technology is so crazy. We can do this thing. Because you had arcade cabinets, but even those were whatever. Mm-hmm. So I think it was completely mind blowing. Just like you said, when I saw PS1, and especially if they had, I'm blanking on the goddamn acronym, but the video within it. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, even the polygon stuff, I'm like, wow, we're in 3D now. And it looked terrible. But yeah, I think they had a full appreciation, thought, how could it get better? Just like we mistakenly do all the time, even today. You're like, yeah, 4K, what do you need better than that? And then
I think we've definitely entered the point of the uncanny valley
for sure.
Push it, pushing it into super realistic thing it's kind of a buzzkill in a way. Like, I'm not interested in playing something like that. I'd rather see something that's like goofier.
You want to exaggerate.
I'm breaking kayfabe right now. I'd like to play some games.
Yeah.
I want to see some fun shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
We just both got PS5s, and it's like I'm using a 12-year-old TV that I haven't hooked up into. It's like, shit, now I got to buy a 4K TV to see if it really is that kind of leap.
Yeah.
Right. Woe was me, I have to buy a new TV, but
Imagine if they remade like LA Noire today.
Oh, dude, it would look crazy.
It would be, it's like, oh, awesome. I'm never going to play that. That seems like an exercise in like, what can we do? How can we make this real life?
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
it takes the escapism and the feeling of getting away. It will get to that sad point of they somehow just mimic it. Like the uncanny valley, I think one day will be overcome with technology.
Sure.
And it'll be so sad because people are like, I like my virtual life so much better than I like my real life.
It's already happening. That's already here.
I was going to say it's already happening with the metaverse. They just couldn't figure out how to digitally make legs look that realistic. So they took them out. Like, you don't even need them. Who likes legs anyway? Your knees always hurt. Your hips get fucked. We're getting rid of them.
Shout out to Crippled Jesus. It's not that good. Anyway, let's get back to the story. Let's find out what these people thought of the console world.
So, speaking about the Magnavox, Jim, Yamauchi was actually able to score the rights to distribute the Magnavox Odyssey in Japan. So, he was like distributing the Magnavox Odyssey. But Yamauchi wanted to have his own breakthrough product. Like, he's like, all right, well, I'm like selling this American-made system, but I want to have like a Nintendo game system.
Yeah, why not?
So as I mentioned, he set up these R&D teams, right? And they're kind of working in the games department. And he's like, all right, R&D teams, we have to start making a console because I don't want to be distributing Magnavox's shit.
What do you think there was ever a moment in the company where they're like, hey, stop making calculators. Let's do something fun.
Oh, this would happen all the time. That was one thing I was going to talk about. Like, if you worked for Nintendo, Yamauchi would put you on a project, and like you would spend like years, like this is like Japanese work ethic, like where you like don't see your family for years. Mm-hmm. You get on the fucking shitty train, you put your head down, you like after work maybe you'd like secretly go and buy some hentai from like some guy in an alley, and then it would show up on Yamauchi's desk, and he would just be like, no. Like, he wouldn't even give you criticism. He's just like, nope. And then your project was killed.
Yeah.
I would like to think in, like, some weird universe, the Japanese have tricked us into thinking that's what they're doing. But their whole, like, oh, my work is so important. But in reality, it's just to avoid their wives and children.
Well, they did have Love Hotel, so I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Like, oh, yes, I got to put in.
I got to work.
Easy 65 hours this week.
Yeah.
And I commute for 4 hours.
It's actually like Scandinavia. Like, they don't work at all. Like,
I mean, she's just like, Fred, this is the fourth time that you've pitched this Love Hotel. Jesus Christ. It's like, no, it's going to work this time. Trust me. I tweaked it a bit.
I appreciate it, but I don't think Nintendo is trying to be selling white pants. I can't.
So one of the big problems with him being like, all right, let's make a game console is that in Japan, like going along this work ethic is like you work for a company till you die. Like there's company brand loyalty. Like once you work, it's like the salary man. It's a whole, they call it the salary man. You work for your salary, you work for the company. So poaching talent out of these like high tech jobs from places like Sony or, Yamaha or any of these places was really hard because people just wouldn't leave. You can't just like take the head tech guy and put him in your company. So in 1977, Yamauchi made probably one of the best career moves of his career by hiring a fresh college graduate named Shigeru Miyamoto, the creator of Mario. Shigeru Miyamoto, I mean, probably the biggest name in video game industry ever.
He looks younger than me still.
Very weird.
He does. He's ridiculously just like, he's a guy you look at, it's just like, man, this guy's almost never had a bad day in his life.
I mean,
No, and he probably doesn't drink or have actual fun. Like, it's part of the bit.
Right.
So we have that on him, boys, right?
Yeah.
That's goddamn right.
Well, I imagine him like he's just kind of on acid naturally every day.
It'd be really funny if in the near future we find out that Miyamoto is actually like a serial killer. That would be the funniest thing ever.
Yeah, that's why his face looks so young, because it's other people's faces that he's just been grafting onto his face.
And no one will ever care either. No one will ever care if you make Mario.
Entire group of schoolroom children or school children murdered in his basement. It is me.
Yeah.
He doesn't even get the catchphrase right. They would be fun because he's given a lot of kids joy. So I think it weighs out.
Yeah.
I mean,
You know, let's call it a wash.
The new
Jimmy
Zelda's
Seville.
coming out. Dude, he ate babies. Yeah, but the new Zelda looks like it's pretty good.
listen, how many of us still listen to Thriller? I mean, there's certain things that you just go, it is what it is. There's quality.
Sometimes a song slaps. You know me, I'm in the shower listening to Chris Brown, you know? So so Nintendo's first foray. I usually don't use that word in common language. I don't know why
weird,
I wrote it. Nintendo's first foray into the video game industry was in 1977 when they hired Shigeru, and it was the Color TV Game 6. And this was a partnership with Mitsubishi. Again, like another one of those weird things. Oh, Mitsubishi motorcycles. Like, no, we're also going to make, TV game
TVs.
consoles. Like
Yes.
Pong. Yeah.
The Mitsubishi Galant is a fine vehicle.
Yeah.
My best friend's first car. Yep.
But
Sorry.
yeah, what do you call it? The TV game system, just like, they released like 10 of them, didn't they? And it's all just like 1,000 different versions of Pong every way. It's like,
Yeah,
this
I
one's
was-
hockey now. Oh, this one's soccer now.
I was going to say the sequel to the Game 6 was, wait for it, the Color TV Game 15. Had 15 games on there, dude. And again, it's
man.
like what you were saying, Jim. It's like, here's Pong, but the background's blue. Here's Pong, where the background is red. Like...
Well, it started a long tradition for Nintendo of just like repackaging the same crap for 30 years straight, but still being like, oh, it's a plumber who jumps on shit. Oh, a plumber who jumps on shit again. And we've just been playing the same thing again and again, and we get suckered into it every time.
This time you can throw a hat.
How many Yoshis can you idiots make?
But this one's purple now. Now this one's made of wool.
It's got a whole island. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Sure.
We're going to put in a baby that cries the entire time, a baby that's being eaten by Miyamoto, and they record the sound, and that's where that sound comes from.
That sound came from the basement of Miyamoto's house. Allegedly.
Yeah, in Minecraft.
Right? You just have to throw that in there. In Minecraft. So they release these consoles great. Like I said, they're not amazing. It's just Pong repackaged. And Yamauchi wants more, though, right? And he had seen the rise of the personal computer, right? We're talking about like Apple coming out on the scene now. We did a Jobs episode that, again, could be redone because it's probably
Don't
shit.
just stop mentioning the old episode.
I'm going to keep bringing him up. Yamauchi had an idea. He's like, guess what? We're going to come out with a personal computer, but we're going to disguise it as a game console. So it's going to be a secret internet machine, right? Like, you could go on the internet with this. Oh, my God.
Sick.
Yeah.
You can print boobs.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yep. Virtual love hotel streaming.
And X Hamster was born.
Man of taste.
Yeah. So his team went to work, and Yamauchi was like, the thing is, we need to make this thing as cheap as possible. But again, this has to be like this Trojan horse of like personal computers. Because I guess in the late 70s, early 80s, like a personal computer was like really intimidating. Because people were like, I don't know what I'm going to use this for. I love one of the biggest selling points of early personal computers was that you could make a grocery list, but you couldn't print the grocery list. You could just type it on up. Be like, I need apples, chicken, sardines, and squids. And then you just look at it and you have to memorize it. So
It weighed 600 pounds. It cost $5,000. And you're like, I have arrived.
Well, the future's here. We can relax now.
yeah.
Everything's going to be fine.
It's all up from here, boys.
So don't forget those apples.
Yeah. So he's like, we have to make this thing a game console. So there's going to be no mouse or keyboard or modem that like sells with this machine. It just needs to like have the ability to do that. Like we're going to have those ports there. It's like backwards from Apple, where like they take away ports. Mm-hmm. He had extra ports in there.
They're giving them back now. Okay, lighten up.
The first real success came from the new employee Shigeru Miyamoto with the arcade game Donkey Kong. Now, it was not too successful in Japan, so these developers would create something, and, you know, he'd drive them like dogs, like sticking to hard deadlines, whatever, and they'd be working overtime. And then you would just show up with this finished game, and you'd put it in front of Yamauchi, who didn't play games. He'd have someone else play the game, and he'd sit there and drink whiskey, like just like chugging back whiskey, and like in a Roman emperor, he just thumbs up or thumbs down, and depending on that, like all of that work was just like out the window. Like there was no like revision. It was just like no.
So just imagine if like the world was run by Twitch viewers.
That's what I was about to say. I was like, he's the original Twitch viewer.
Yeah.
He's so visionary. He's like, one day we're not even gonna play. We're gonna watch other people play for us.
and he's really putting his money where his mouth is. Like that's like I'm not even gonna bother to feel any controller or anything like that. Look, if I was in his position, I would shut everyone down for fun. But he's at least just drinking whiskey in front of them and making it terrible.
Yeah.
So I respect that. Travis, you're right. I do like this guy a lot.
I kind of saw it as like somebody who was like a vegan, like making a menu for a hamburger joint, and they're actually making like meat hamburgers, right? Like
Travis and Tom, I do have to ask one question though. In doing your research, did you figure out, did he have a specific type of whiskey? Was it Japanese whiskey? Was it American? Was it Irish? Like, I assume Japanese, but did he have a specific brand he liked?
He liked Scotch.
Oh, okay. So he went Scotch. Okay.
I do know something about Japanese whiskey is that it's relatively new and only within the last 40 years or 40? So.
Yeah.
In 1980, while developing the Family Computer, or Famicom, Nintendo partnered up with Sharp to create the Game & Watch, which is basically a shitty handheld Tiger game. The only reason why anyone knows about the Game & Watch is because they made the stupid nondescript man in Smash Brothers.
It's one of the best characters, though.
Yeah, he does throw eggs and bacon on people, so I can appreciate that. But
yeah, dude, when you hit it with that sign and it says 9 and you just crush them, you're like, fuck it.
Yeah.
Damn it.
Do you guys own a Game & Watch? Or I feel like they're expensive, right?
They've gone up. I own the newer ones that have come out in the last couple years, but I also have one of the collections on the Game Boy. And like, I guess when you have nothing else, you can consider them fun, but like all of them are kind of just like boring after about like 5 minutes. Like you score chasing, but some of them are just like super simple. You're just like juggling a ball in one of them, or just trying to like, it's almost like digital whack-a-mole, but like you said, like playing it on a watch. So
it's literally, like you said, it's a Tiger Electronics, like the little handhelds. That's exactly what
Even though they still are kind of better than the Tiger ones that came out 20 years later, surprisingly enough.
That's questionable.
I remember I had so many weird little Tiger. I feel like everyone that wanted to get a kid a video game, but they didn't want to pay video game prices, would be like, I don't know, the kid likes video games. Here's an X-Men Tiger game.
Hell yeah. And instead of buying a Game Boy and then all the cost for whatever the Game Boy was brand new and each individual game, here's a Tiger. Like, there you go.
Yeah. And they're reselling the old ones too. It's like, because like they realize that like anyone in our age group will buy anything from our childhood again. So like the straight up Tigers, they're reselling them again for like $20 a pop. And like I see them and like part of my brain's like, oh shit, like you never had this one, you want this one. And you're like, wait, no, these are all terrible and you'll never use it. Like you haven't. I have enough plastic crap sitting around my basement right now that like I don't need more.
See, this is where I go to what we talked about earlier. I gave my son, he's into Spider-Man. I got him a Spider-Man Tiger Electronics. That's one of his first video games. I'm like, you ain't going right to the great shit. You're going to start with some terrible stuff like I did. So there you go. Yep.
All right. So the Famicom, or NES that we know in America was released in Japan in 1983. It had a whopping 2,000 bytes of RAM. Bytes. This isn't megabytes. I feel like kids don't even know what a byte is. You know, it starts at gig.
Yeah.
It was an instant success, and the whole leading up to the release of this game, Yamauchi had been a hellraiser when it came to the chip suppliers and parts, changing specs on the Famicom overnight. So he demanded, if they had like a change to the system or they wanted to penny pinch out a single component, they would call up the distributors and be like, change all of this, throw out everything, or else you're not working with Nintendo. You know what I mean? And this became like a common trend of Nintendo. Like, if you did not meet everything that they wanted you to meet, you were thrown out. Like, there was no negotiating. Like, you're off. So 500,000 Famicons flew off the shelves in 2 months. And they sold for the modern equivalent of about $450.
Nice.
Yeah. So 6 months later, most of the systems were crashing. They all started. This is why you never buy first generation of anything. Because even back then in the 80s, all the systems started crashing. And Yamauchi did something unheard of. He recalled all of the Famicons. Nintendo lost millions of yen. But it was a smart move in the long run because they had loyal customers, right? They took the big loss. They're already a big company. But now you've got this Famicom, the Trojan horse that's going to be the personal computer of Japan.
So you said they lose millions of yen. Was that $34,000?
Yeah. $420. That's it.
$420. That's it. Well, loyalty comes at a price.
Small price to pay to reestablish your honor.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Trav, as you're talking about this, I mean, this goes along with one of his guiding principles with the Famicom and the NES, which was the official, like, that Nintendo seal of approval. That stamp, which he used as a way of saying, like, we're not going to do what Atari did and have the video game crash again, because you're not going to have shitty indie developers putting stuff on. We're saying we've quality tested it, so it has a seal that you see on the black box and pretty much every NES game, I think. But yeah, that's an official release. You get that seal.
Right. So to go along with that seal, and that seal is very, very important to jump off of what you're saying. If you wanted to become a licensee for the Famicom or Nintendo, you had to basically bend over and get fucked by the giant donkey dick that was Nintendo. So first of all, the icebreaker meeting with Yamauchi would usually be a game of Go in silence. While he drank whiskey. And now keep in mind, Yamauchi, by the end of his life, would be a 9th Dan in Go. So that's like the equivalent of like one of the best chess players in the world, right? So you just
a 9th Dan?
Yeah. They do karate.
The fuck is this, an Irish family?
No, they do karate. They do karate belts for Go. Yeah. So you're a black belt 9 times over.
All right.
Yeah.
Fucking cool, I guess. For somebody who hates games, sure likes a game.
So you'd sit there, play Go, get your ass beat while he drinks whiskey. Then you would have to agree to not only doing an upfront cost of all the cartridges, which Nintendo marked up as much as they could, you had to buy the cartridges in advance, right? So you'd be doing the game. You're like, I want to get, 500,000 cartridges, 1 million cartridges. You'd pay for these cartridges. Then you have to get that Nintendo seal of approval. So you could be working on the game. You've already bought the cartridges. You send it to Nintendo and they're like, nope, this doesn't meet our quality, standard of quality. Too bad you bought those cartridges. You can't resell them because we'll come after you legally. And then on top of that, Nintendo took about 35% of the sales cuts of your game. So you're making no money.
It's like Steam.
Yeah, well, they're
basically.
Nintendo were motherfuckers with.
And not only that, if you're like if you were a third-party developer, eventually they only limited you to like 5 releases a year too, so you weren't competing with Nintendo.
Right. Yeah. Because Nintendo was also a software company. They were creating their own games. They could limit the amount that you could release. And this also led to Yamauchi being called a like price fixer and like, running a monopoly and all this. And now also the retailers were not kept from Yamauchi's wrath. Basically, the console and the games were sold at a fixed price. So that means if you had to move stock, say if there was a shit game, like the worst game ever, you can't drop the price of it just to get it off your shelves. If you did, goodbye to any future Nintendo shipments. The hottest selling electronic game, because Yamauchi be like, you drop the price on that? Nope, you're not getting our shit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, it makes sense why blast processing did so well later on.
Yep.
But also, that's what Nintendo does now, right? Like, because like,
their games,
their prices never go down.
Their prices never go down, and all the practices, like, and I know we're gonna get to it, but like the lineage that he left in mentality of Nintendo, and that it's trickled down, and it's like so amazing that it still seeps into the market today. Because you're like, some of these games, how is it still the same price? Like, what the fuck is going on?
Dude, half the Switch library is just like barely updated remakes of games from the Wii U, but no one bought a Wii U, so they're like, oh, we'll just put this on the Switch now, but we'll still charge you $60 and give you like 1 pack of DLC with it. But people still buy it, and then the fucking price doesn't go down for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Well, honestly, I don't think there is any game out there that's worth $60 ever. It's a volume game. They put these monies on there arbitrary. Like, if I'm gonna spend $60 on a disc or a cartridge, it's not gonna be a game. It's gonna be something crazy. Like, it's gonna be information that I need. It's going to be Nancy Pelosi's investments after the 2008 market crash, or Lindsey Graham getting pegged by fucking Shane Diesel or something. It's going to be good. It's going to be something I could use.
Tom,
it's not going to be a game.
I have an excellent CD-ROM game that I purchased when I was a kid called the Encyclopedia Britannica. You would love that one. Hours of clicking.
It's got
full
the
information.
Yeah.
Dude, I have Britannica 98 sitting in the shelf over here because I don't get rid of anything.
Of course you don't. God damn it, Jim. Of course you still have that.
The games, it doesn't make sense. I mean, like, I get they have to make their money back, but okay, Breath of the Wild, that's a $60 game, but everything else I've seen in the last 15 years, they're not.
But you don't buy Nintendo, it'll be half price within 3 months at this point.
Yeah, and what's fascinating is, like, Tom, like what you're saying, if you look back at the old ads, like, I love people who post from like the 90s and shit, the ads we used to get for like Toys R Us and shit. Games were still $60 or $70 back then. And the fact that the price still holds kind of today with inflation, I go, that's kind of impressive. Where, like,
well, it shows you how much they're actually worth.
Oh yeah, well yeah.
Like they're keeping that price point because it's all just made up money anyway.
Yeah.
Like, when you have a stellar game, yeah, of course you want to sell it for as much as possible, but you could probably sell more if it was volume. I don't know. It's weird. Like, what people in the gaming world pay for shit, I will never.
Well, like, I bought a Switch last year, and I paid $60 for Breath of the Wild. And like, I was like, what? That game came out like what?
That's too much. Yeah,
2017 launch game.
Yeah,
the first
like,
game that came out
yeah,
with it.
Yeah,
yeah. And as good as that game is, it's like after 2 years, you got to give someone a break.
Well, right, but you could get like God of War, which is like a PlayStation exclusive, or was until they released it on PC for like no dollars because it's been out on PlayStation Plus. Or
I just beat
$10.
that today for $10. I got it $10, and that game beats Breath of the Wild 12 times over, and I got it for $10. To your point, like, I literally got it dirt cheap, way better. And I'm like, Jim and I have said this many times. The biggest problem I have with Nintendo fanboys is that they never stop feeding the machine that is that price point and what you're getting, and it just never goes away, because I think they just have that genius of keep marketing to the younger and younger, Like, I don't necessarily think it's guys that keep growing up that always get it. I think the young just keep shoveling out that money for it.
Right. Women need Triforce tattoos. All right? Do not take that from them.
Yeah.
They're
right
gamers
above,
too, Jim.
yeah, right above the clitoral hood. I would need to see that Triforce or I'm not getting a boner.
You need a Majora's Mask right in between the tits. You just got to do what you got to do.
That's the difference between 3 months of OnlyFans and a year of OnlyFans right there. All right?
Yeah, if you look at like how any other form of media sells, it has a time period in which that's the bulk of the selling.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond that, it just acts as a business card.
Yeah.
Like, get people in the door.
Yeah.
That's why you're able to get a $10 game that was $60. You can get God of War for $9 now.
Yeah.
Because they already made their money on it.
Mm-hmm.
It's done.
Right.
Like, the deal's done.
Not Nintendo.
Nope.
Yeah.
So one distributor said that they feared Yamauchi like a marionette fears a puppeteer. If a company upset Nintendo, they would cut their strings.
I mean, that's a weird analogy. Maybe it's something Japanese, because I don't know if marionettes actually feel anything.
They do in Devil May Cry. So
Is that a Japanese game?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Capcom.
not on Nintendo for some reasons that we will find out eventually.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I like that.
Another thing that was on the top of Yamauchi's list was piracy. Nintendo has always been very big on anti-piracy. Obviously, any company is big on anti-piracy, but they go a little bit further than most. And this main focus of piracy would eventually almost topple the company with some very piss-poor decisions under Yamauchi's reign later on down the road. But now every Nintendo cartridge on the original SNES or NES had a security chip that prevented piracy from making, from people putting pirated games on cartridges.
Right.
And of course, when you put out something pirated, we all know, as the guy from Metallica found out, people are going to get around these things, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, like, the age-old term that Nintendo is like the Metallica of the gaming world. It's all coming together.
Yeah, right.
And it's easy to topple too. Like on an American NES, like it's just one pin on one chip. Like if you disconnect that pin, then you can put any kind of cartridge in there that you want.
Really?
That's it?
Yeah, it's one fucking pin connection. Yeah.
Well, apparently this was like that big brain information you just gave us was like something that like thousands of people were trying to figure out. And apparently some company in Taiwan was like the only person to, like, this random pirate company found out. And Nintendo actually sued. This was like the first time ever. Nintendo sued a country. They sued Taiwan.
Good. Fuck that country.
They sued. Tom, I know you're trying to get a career in big tech with China, so come on.
I mean,
they're both being progressive by
the...
calling them a country and still saying "fuck you."
That's true.
My resume name will have something similar to Rusty Shackelford on the top of it.
Right. So Nintendo sues Taiwan for not regulating the system and allowing these people to release games from, I guess, removing one pin. Right.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's Jim. You said it's in the console. It's not the cartridge.
And at least in North America, it's in the console itself. I don't know because like the carts are different between Famicom and like North America too, where like there's different sizes and like different pins. Like I think it's like 72 pins on North America and it's like 60 something in Japan. It's weird. Like they just
right.
Oh, so you're talking about cracking the console? Right?
Yeah.
So like
crack the console for.
Okay, it's kind of hard to be like, hey, we're a production company and you can play all of our games for half price if you just open up your $450 console and snip this pin. Like, that's not really
right. This was cracking
fly.
the cartridge. Yeah. So,
right. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. So I guess some company in Taiwan figured out how to crack the cartridge, which I guess was probably a little harder, maybe just like, whatever, it worked with that pin that you're cutting, right?
Yeah. They might cover it.
So now if you were a wholesaler or retailer, if you were caught selling a non-licensed game, obviously, for the Nintendo, and this didn't matter we're going to talk about going into America eventually, but it didn't matter if you were in Japan or in America. Like, you were instantly blacklisted or worse, like sued by Nintendo.
Or they just bomb the hell out of you for fun. It's a game. Come down.
Once again, like branching off as a company, Nintendo bombs dropping on you.
Yes. The Ultra Bombs.
Yep.
Right. This whole thing of like creating the security chip caused Yamauchi a bunch of slander and legal battles over price fixing and running a monopoly, especially when Nintendo enters the American market. Mm-hmm. And now, before we go into the good old US of A, I just wanted to mention that Yamauchi did eventually release the attachments for the network that he envisioned for the Japanese Famicons. Remember, I was saying he put in all these ports, and he wanted to make the Famicom this Trojan horse computer. So in Japan, you could take your NES and turn it into a computer where you could log on and do banking, things like banking, lottery. Probably not porn because like there's not enough.
Somebody found a way. I promise you.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it was
horse betting.
Coming up.
Yeah, game and watch porn. Yeah.
Life finds a way. Come on.
Yeah.
But yeah, like horse betting was huge. Like they had like a whole dedicated like controller with like a fuckload of buttons and like a punch card system almost for that shit that you could like do it over landlines. Like they had crazy shit over there. Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. And Yamauchi would try to do that same thing in America, but for a few reasons, he does not get into that. I'll talk about that. Because now we're going to America. We're going to talk about America for a little bit.
Woo! Thank God.
Because to be honest, like the whole story about Nintendo America is a very long story, and it doesn't really focus on Hiroshi Yamauchi. It's mainly on his son-in-law. Because we're going to continue that trend again. Because the son-in-law takes over. Right. It's Minoru Yarakawa. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name.
It's an awesome name to have.
You're still alive. He did not take the Yamauchi name because he came from a higher class. He was like from, again, like one of those samurai classes that existed for... it'd be like marrying into the Windsors, in England or something like that. Like, he didn't take the name. So we're not going to go... I'm going to talk a little bit about Nintendo of America, but the whole story is really interesting, and I would recommend picking up the book that I read for this, which is Game Over by David Sheaf. It's interesting because the book was written in 1994, so there's like a lot of weird shit that like just was like, oh, in the future maybe we can look at pictures on the internet.
You can download the boobies.
Yeah, maybe you could see the boobies on the internet. I don't know.
You can see the squid actually fuck all holes at once.
Yeah, it came out before Nintendo 64 or PlayStation. Like, it's an old book, but it gives a really good description of like the birth of Nintendo of America and Yamauchi.
That's all we're covering, man. Yeah. We're not doing Smash Brothers. We're not there.
Yeah.
And
free
Yamauchi, like he said some of his more, I'd say, not controversial, but bold statements after that book, probably, especially about modern gamers.
I had to dig around a little bit extra for that, but to hear his whole origin story, I'd mainly use this book, Game Over. Yeah. So his son-in-law, he was like, guess what? You're going to take over Nintendo of America. So his son-in-law, he was actually Western educated. He went to MIT, Harvard, and also Cambridge. The problem was that Yamauchi's daughter, Yoko, it's always the Yoko that's like the fucking
it up.
That's where it starts.
Right. Yoko was like, hey, I'll marry you, but under one condition. You can never work for Nintendo. Because according to her, Yamauchi had terrorized his children through whoring, boozing, and power stroking himself over Nintendo.
I think she has to stop thinking about herself.
Yeah.
It's pretty selfish, really.
Yeah.
So he whored out his
the
family.
Beatles,
who hasn't?
Yeah. He ignored us and played a game called go.
Big picture. Big picture.
And fuck these big titty anime pillows.
He just kept hitting us with this extendo reach arm thing that was supposed to grab stuff. It just grabbed his
Dad,
beatings.
we want to go to the water park. And he'd be like, I am cooking squid and fucking pillows. Don't talk to me.
Priorities.
So his son-in-law Minoru and Yoko were actually living in Vancouver, British Columbia. And Minoru was like, he came from, like I mentioned, he came from the samurai class. Their family was like huge into textiles in Japan. And he actually, their family had more money than the Yamauchis did. But he had tried to make it on his own. He didn't want to like use any of his family's money. And he started constructing condos in Vancouver. But times were tough. And eventually his father-in-law, Yamauchi, called him back to Japan and was like, hey, you want to run Nintendo America? Like, we got to break into this shit. You know, right? He's like, oh, okay, I'll do it. And I don't know. There's a fight with his wife. Whatever. He's gonna run Nintendo of America.
It's great.
Now, the story about like the founding of Nintendo of America is kind of interesting because even though it came from this huge financial backing from Yamauchi, it was kind of almost like startup-y in a way. Like, yes, there was $50 million behind it, but like it was like a company of like, it was like basically 5 people trying to get this system off the ground. And you think, wow, if you have this crazy powerful console already built, like how hard is it to sell that? But because there was this giant, the original video game boom had ended in such a disaster, the whole industry imploded and it ruined companies, shareholders, retailers. People like killed themselves because of how much money was lost over like the Ataris and the Magnavoxes and all that shit. It was hard for places like Toys R Us or like anything to pick up video games at this point when Nintendo of America came in.
Yeah, I mean, it was just considered a gimmick with the Atari era. And then when it, like, you know, when it bombed out, it's like, oh, that gimmick's dead. Like, you look at it today, like how no one plays, like, Guitar Hero anymore, when for a while that was the biggest thing in the world. Now it's like, oh, Burnout. So they, like, changed
they even did the replica Rock Band thing, and I was like, this is even dated by the time that came.
Yep.
I mean, I feel like it was almost a little bit more than just the gimmick, because, like, people had built so many, like, big careers on it. It was almost like, if Guitar Hero or whatever, like, I don't know, there was an entire industry just around that. Like, there was like 8 competitors of Guitar Hero, and like people were putting like all of their money into it, you know?
Yeah, true.
It was a little bit more like, just because in order to have a system, you had to have so many other businesses running around it, you know? So when the system falls, all these other businesses fall.
Also, keep in mind, guitar is stupid. So to take like a thing so dumb and get that gimmick, it's fun, look what we're doing now. They have to find something that people are doing all the time. If they want to make a simulated version of it, like the truck driver simulator, something like that. Farmer simulator, that's staying power.
Still going strong. 2022, out now.
Yeah.
Crushing it. But Guitar Hero is like, everyone realized, they were like, everyone who plays guitar is stupid. I'm not playing stupid games. I'm going to play real games. I'm going to play Minecraft.
Yes.
And make Bitcoin in it.
Well, I was going to say, Travis, this is basically what NFTs are going to be. They're the bubble that's going to pop.
Yeah. It's exactly. Everyone's going to have their digital ape that they can't do anything
like,
with.
What the fuck? I took my whole life savings in this.
Yeah. So, like I was saying, it's almost like kind of startup-y, because like him and about 8 people, they personally launched the NES in the tri-state area in America, and they basically bought a warehouse in Jersey, and the book goes into like I was just like rat infested, and like they had just stacks of Nintendos, right? They would set up stands in malls, and they would go to these retailers like Toys R Us or Crazy Eddie's was mentioned. We did a little side thing in that. They would go to these places and they would do something unheard of. They'd be like, here's a supply of Nintendos, and basically after 60 days after 90 days we'll buy back any stock. So it was just like a complete, like, no risk,
risk free for It's good. It's good business.
Yeah, well, it's desperate business. Like that was how hard it was to sell a game console, like in the early '80s, because of how much shit people had lost to Atari for various reasons. That's a whole nother.
And they had to throw
episode.
so much shit in the bundles with it. Like that's why you got the Zapper and Rob the Robot and all the other crap, because
Right.
like you had to sell it as a toy and not as a video game system.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a big thing too when they changed it from the Famicom to the Nintendo Entertainment System, because if you put console or like game into the name, it was like taboo. So they were like, "Oh, it's an entertainment system." It's like, it's not a video game system, guys. Trust me.
It's eventually what Xbox caught shit for, which is the full home entertainment package, where you stream and do everything. And everyone's like, "That's ridiculous. I just want a console."
I mean, that was Yamauchi's plan in the early '90s. That we're going to talk about multimedia, when that was like the buzzword. Multimedia.
It does HD VHS. You can play anything you want on it. It looks, that makes the spandex look good on ladies.
It has a button. You rewind your dad's porno back to the where he left it off to the second.
Damn it, Jim.
Exactly.
So just kind of covering this Nintendo in America. Nintendo basically Frankensteined the video game market back to life in the early 80s. And just, I want to do a quick little like PowerPoint, one little tidbits of information at a time here, right? So, Mario was actually named after the landlord of their first Seattle warehouse. Some dude named Mario owned their warehouse.
Nice.
And that was, they didn't really have a name for him. They're like, I don't know, this asshole Mario wants to like run us out of the fucking building. Let's call him Mario.
Okay, you can stay now because I got a little guy named after me. He's me. I don't know how to plumb. Is this going to be a problem? I don't know anything about plumbing. I know what propane is.
Donkey Kong would be sued by Universal over King Kong. Universal would lose to Nintendo because mainly due to Nintendo's star lawyer John Kirby discovering that that Universal actually didn't own the rights to the name King Kong. Yeah. And if the name John Kirby sounds familiar, the name that pink fucking deep-throating man, Kirby, after their lawyer. So you're just playing as a lawyer eating like gentlemen and
taking everyone else's talent, not doing shit on yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember, every lawyer's pink inside, right?
Now, Nintendo would also be accused of a monopoly. They would be dragged to Congress. And we previously roasted the owner of the late stage terminally ill Atari, Jack Tramiel, would bring them.
Yeah, but you don't have to talk about that.
Yeah. We don't have to, I don't. That's an early
Old episodes.
Yeah.
It would eventually escalate till it became brought in front of Congress. And there was some anti-Japanese racism going on in the 90s. It was so on the nose that the hearing about this trust busting of Nintendo.
Did they call it rust busting? Rush.
Cluster buster.
No, they decided to hold the hearing on December 7th, 1990.
Wow.
And if you,
Got him.
yeah.
Awesome.
Us history boys.
Yeah. Woo.
Let's get to the bottom of this.
So this is kind of interesting, was that when Tramiel and all these there was a bunch of other companies that joined on this lawsuit. They're basically defunct, these companies. They ganged up on Nintendo and were suing them over the security chip that I mentioned before. And along with other things like price fixing and some of the things Nintendo was actually guilty of. I don't know if the security chip, like, I feel like it's your hardware. Like, you should be able to do what you want to it.
Like, we're all taught in the American school system that monopolies are illegal. That is wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's many monopolies over things.
Yeah.
All the time. There's nothing done about that. That's like, so to go and bring that to court, like, as if you don't have power at your house. Like going, no, that's the worst thing is to just have one that did it like this.
Yeah.
So you're fucking
It's just
retarded.
weird.
We're in a
Terrible
world now where
lawsuit.
like 4 companies own everything. So like,
Yeah. So
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
no.
So
This
it's a
whole,
terrible lawsuit.
But even in
Really.
the 90s, like this whole lawsuit was definitely riding off. Like Japan was beating the shit out of us in tech in the early 90s. Like
As they
we had,
should.
well, we had nuked them. We had built up their economy, and then they were beating us at like our own game of like innovation. And old boomers and silent generation people were so butthurt in the early 90s.
Are you fucking surprised? Like, we beat the shit out of them. We turned every single one of their male population to bedroom boys, where all they have to do is sleep and engineer for funsies. What the fuck do you think you're going to get?
and if you ever played an Atari 7800, no one played that fucking thing. So
No.
even if things from 5 years earlier, you still
They
go for
tried to soften
And Nintendo's-
everyone by just that was their way of getting back at us. Like, okay, you're gonna do this to us, we're gonna do this to you.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Over here, it was like, all right, let's show our machismo and like show how free and open we are, and like artistic expression. One of the worst things that has ruined innovation in every aspect. That was what we were hyper focused on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That, like all the youth of that time, everyone who was going to be getting a job in the next 5 years was so obsessed with their fucking art shit and or their ideas of peace and freedom and love. It's just like why are you focusing on this ever? It's obviously a shtick. Like look what they're doing over there. They don't fucking give a shit. They have a little bedroom and they're redesigning the world on their free time, and in the other time they're becoming brilliant mathematicians. Okay, we asked for that one.
And they have one release, and it involves tentacles going into every orifice of a woman. Just give it to them.
Yeah. Priorities, people. You know,
We break up our porn into
Don't be
17
surprised.
different holes. They do all the holes at once. They are very straight. They are streamlined people.
But you better blur
Get
those
it done.
goddamn dongs. You better not show those.
I don't want, dude. Japanese guys aren't gay. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, confirmed.
Yeah,
I've
we're
never
so
seen
not
another
gay. We're
penis.
blurring all this.
So all right. So back to the chip thing. The chip. I think that's fine to have like security chips on your.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. It's like
It doesn't matter.
You'd expect it, right?
It's like having a
But there
patent
was-
on your own technology, which every
Right.
company has today, which is like, you have a patent on like your proprietary property.
So there was like a weird thing where IBM, because that's also existed since I think the 50s or 60s. IBM
Yeah,
was
a long time.
Yeah, IBM was sued in the 70s because it needed to be a universal platform. So basically they were like, you're developing the hardware, but the software needs to be accepted by any type of person, and thus the floppy disk and other things like CDs were produced for PCs. Right?
Treating it like a
Are you
utility
fucking
almost.
kidding me? Someone was trying to sue them for this?
Well, yeah, so Jack Tramiel and these assholes were trying to sue Nintendo because they're like, this is a computer, therefore you can't have a cartridge that has a security chip. It has to be a universal media thing. It has to be like a CD or a floppy disk or
And
something
the
like that.
argument is that if it's for the sake of humanity, it has to be universal to some degree.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's
Totally forgetting that it's going through the legal system of the United States of America, which, like, they don't even know each other's phone numbers.
well, I mean, we've roasted Jack Tramiel. He's a frogman. He was a terrible. They called him Darth Vader. Like he was just a miserable. He bought a dying company, and now he's just trying to like milk as much as he can from this industry.
He's a dumb idiot.
yeah.
We know that.
So
Fuck that guy.
yeah, so their whole thing was that like if you can't copyright the software. It has to be a universally accepted format. So any software could play on your Nintendo. And what's interesting though is because Nintendo always claimed this is why they were the Trojan horse, right? Because even in the States, they had put those ports on their Nintendo to make it a personal computer. Yamauchi never gave up on the fact that he wanted his Nintendo to be a computer.
Yep.
But because it went to court, they're like, no, this is a toy. This is a toy. Like this thing, the reason why it has a cartridge security system, it's a toy. It's not a computer. We're not going to put floppy disks on here. Fuck that. So they like
Smart.
180
Yeah.
because they got sued.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Now, obviously, the Game Boy, huge success. Not going to go into all that. There's also a very interesting story about Nintendo acquiring the rights to Tetris. Very amazing. Involves Gorbachev. Basically, they made a deal with the Soviet Union because the Soviet Union owned everything in the Soviet Union. Very interesting.
And actually, Nintendo, the NES version is worse than Jack Tramiel's ripoff one under their Tengen line. So, like, eventually they broke the code and shit like that. They still just put out cartridges that just look different. But with, like, shittier chipsets that, like, will break down after time. But, like, yeah, anything, like, for any, like, collectors out there, if you have, like, a Genesis that says Tengen on it, like, for, like, the games, kiss that game goodbye, basically. Like, all those chips are dying at this point.
Really?
Yep. Like, there's like a Rolling Gunner or something like that, or Storm Chaser. There's some like $400 game that I would never touch because it has a Tengen level, and it's like, oh, chip's dead. Too bad.
Oh,
shit.
One other thing I wanted to mention, I forgot completely. When they were sued by Universal, the lawyer that sued them at Universal was the owner of LJN. So if you followed, I know you guys are big
AVGN
angry video game nerd fans. LGN is like the dumpster of NES games. So he was suing them to basically be like, I want to release LJN games on the Nintendo and start my own. But he wanted to take over Nintendo America. Yeah.
Now, LJN owned all.
Never knew that.
I mean, and they also owned all the rights to all the major movies and series. So yeah, it made sense. Like they were buying up properties. People mistakenly always think LJN was the developer. They weren't. They were just the ones that were buying the rights to all the movies that you loved as a kid. So if you played a game that was based on a movie on the NES and Super NES,
this entire time while Nintendo of America is like growing, Yamauchi is just overseeing his son-in-law through this whole meteoric rise, right? And he was very quick to judge, right? Like, I don't know how your guys' father-in-law, you don't have to answer this. I'm not married, but like, it would not be a father-in-law that I'd want to have. Because he's like, if you fucked up, he was just like, you're a deadbeat. Why are you married to my fucking daughter, you piece of shit? And then when he did something good, he's like, all right. You know? And it's Nintendo. I mean, the Super Nintendo and the original Nintendo, one of the most successful, if not the most successful platform, consoles ever.
Oh, for a run, yeah. Nintendo, Game Boy, Super NES, like just...
Yeah. So, but he was always like, if the minor fuck up, right? Like there was one time I think he said, oh, we need more shipments. Like we're selling so well. And there was like a catch up in like the shipment, like literally like the boat was delayed. And Yamauchi was like, you're the worst person in the world. Why are you married to my daughter? We need to make more money. You're an idiot.
I'm going to throw you off a building if that boat doesn't get here. That's awesome.
So,
continue.
Minoru sets up the HQ of Nintendo of America in Seattle, and then he actually reached out to his father-in-law. He's like, hey, we have all this anti-Japanese hate going on early 90s with this whole trust-busting thing that I mentioned. And so in 1999, the local MLB team, the Seattle Mariners, were facing relocation. So Minoru asks Yamauchi, would you buy the team? You got loads of money. You got millions and millions of dollars. Like, let's buy the team. If we buy the team, it'll stay in Seattle. Everyone will love us. We'll be heroes, right? So Yamauchi's like, okay, I'll buy the team. And so he buys the team, and then the MLB is like, whoa, non-Americans can't buy baseball teams? And then everyone was like, well, wait a minute. Aren't there Canadian teams? He's like, no. I mean, non-North Americans can't buy baseball teams.
What the fuck? Really?
Yeah.
Right.
Even though Japan's a huge market for baseball in general, too.
Oh, yeah. Also, Yamauchi, not only did he never play a video game, he never went to a baseball game.
Never saw a single game of the team he bought.
Not a single Cracker Jack.
Yeah.
Does Yamauchi just like hate Japan itself because he hates all of their pastimes?
I mean, he likes drinking and whoring, which I feel like is one of their...
That's a big part of them, Jim.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, no, you know what? He's got his priorities.
Yeah. That's one of their not so talked about pastimes. So yeah, Yamauchi was expecting like great press. He's like, "Oh, I'm buying the team. I'm saving it. It's going to stay in Seattle." But everyone was just like, "This Japanese guy is like we're going to end up like." They basically compared it to like we're going to end up like the Premier League in England, where like these Arab Emirates like own half of the English teams. Right?
That should be stopped all the time.
Yeah. So he did end up buying the majority of shares for the Seattle Mariners. And actually today Nintendo still owns 10% of the shares of the team.
They still
but,
own, wow.
Yeah, but at the time he owned the majority of shares, but he gave up the majority vote on the board because basically there was so much of a hubbub. It's like, this is one of these Japs cannot own this. And I didn't say that as a slur. I meant that as what the silent
You're playing
generation.
a character, so you can actually say whatever you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the character. You can
Keep going.
This is the 1990s. There's a lot of silent generation people being like, or greatest generation people saying Japs and slopeheads. You know, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I forgot slopeheads.
The Tojo.
James were a little different.
Jennifer Slopeheads. I got to put that back into my vernacular.
We're bringing it back.
Yeah, Yamauchi like saved the day for Seattle. The Mariners stayed there, but everyone hated him because he was a Japanese man that owned the Mariners. And he honestly didn't care. Like I said, like he never went to a game. He was like, "Sure, I'll buy a baseball team."
That's cool, man. That's fucking cool.
There's a certain amount of don't give a fuckery that goes with buying a baseball team and never watching it. Like,
yeah.
Amen. I mean, it's not like all those weirdos who own like, Golden State and shit, and they're like, "Yeah, I bought it because it's teams." It's like, no, you bought it because the hot dogs are $17.99. We fucking know you.
Yeah,
you know your kind.
You know what you're doing.
No one's getting a sponsorship with IKEA. The hot dogs are what, $1.99, and they've stayed that way for 20 years.
Yeah. Like, no one's going, "Oh, yeah, Mark Cuban's a good guy because, he likes sports." It's like, no, Mark Cuban wants to be more richer.
He wants to be Elon Musk and have a Android mother and a test tube girlfriend wife.
Oh, I can't wait to come into that glass.
Yeah. All right, so back to Yamauchi in Japan himself. So Yamauchi tried really hard. Again, we were talking mainly in Nintendo of America. He's not doing any of this. This is his son-in-law. But Yamauchi himself tried really hard to release an online network in Nintendo of America. Right? So all these NESs were out there, and they had, the ports. Some of them had the ports. I think they got rid of the ports eventually. Am I right?
They did a redesign that took out all that stuff.
Yeah. I think at some, they got
top loader. Yeah,
they got rid of it at some point, but the original ones had ports. So he tested the Nintendo network in Minnesota, of all places, with the Minnesota State Lottery. So they set up a Nintendo online. Remember, this is cutting edge. This isn't like nowadays where the internet's everywhere. You're getting 5G into your vein at every second. So they set up this. Yeah, they set up this Nintendo network to basically so you could turn your Nintendo into a betting machine for the Minnesota State Lottery. And the courts actually got involved and like, "Whoa, this is a toy, right?" And they're like, "No, it's not a toy. It's a computer." "Wait, we can't say that because we got sued because we said it was a toy and it's not a computer." I don't know. So the courts were like, "Kids can gamble on the Nintendo. Like, we don't want that in the States."
Well, maybe we do, but
yeah, well, if they've seen the microtransactions of today, where like some kid gets a credit card and he buys like $5,000 worth of Fortnite skins, You know?
Well,
Oh, yeah.
Not so bad.
do you think that they chose Minnesota to roll this out because, say it in your head with me, but like Japanese saying most other states would sound really weird, but the Minnesota actually makes sense. Say that in your head.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We'll do it.
And there's like 4 people there with internet too. So if it doesn't work, it's not a big loss.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have 2 cities.
success.
They have 2 cities, but no one's heard of them.
They're tiny. Anyway, continue, Travis, before I make myself look worse.
The Turin Stritties.
Okay.
So,
I was
okay,
gonna say
so-
something. Please keep going, Travis.
So this thing fails in the court. They don't want kids gambling on their Nintendo machine computer game systems. It's not a computer. But no worries, because Nintendo and Yamauchi was working on the next generation of systems. You see, Sega had released its 16-bit system before Nintendo had. And they were starting to take a sizable chunk out of the Nintendo monopoly that Nintendo denied that they had a monopoly of.
It's not really a monopoly, though.
It was.
It was until Sega came.
Sega,
Maybe with the way they strong armed like everyone, like developers, retailers, blah blah blah, even like forcing people to make like games harder in America so they couldn't beat it in a weekend at a rental place. Japan fucking hated rental stores.
Yeah, I believe that.
They
It's
actually-
very dishonorable to have to return something
well-
that is so incomplete.
It's interesting because I didn't actually write this into the script, but the book goes into Nintendo of America had a lobbyist in Washington trying to fuck over Blockbuster because they thought that renting a game was illegal because you were like, and what happened, I think the court case went to be, and they couldn't publish the instruction manuals because that was all copyright material. So they had to like come out with fake instruction manuals, and that was basically the solution to it.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just reword a lot of poorly translated Japanese documents, and that's my job. I work for Blockbuster. I'm making sure everyone's getting the treats they want over the weekend. It's good stuff.
So, yeah, eventually Yamauchi would release the SNES, Super Nintendo, Super Famicom, whatever you want to call it, which was, I mean, let's be honest. I know a lot of kids, Genesis has like a place in their heart. Great sound. I love the Genesis sounds. But the SNES was miles ahead of the Genesis. It had more color, had just a better operating system in general.
Yeah, but it had less dolphins.
Yes, it did.
And it wasn't for just sports games.
Yeah.
And it came out 3 years later, so it had that going for it too.
Yeah,
so it's like,
it did have an edge of
we can display 5 times as many colors because technology's way easier, and it's not. I think what was it? The Genesis sound chip was like the Motorola one that was based on like a sine wave almost. It's like that's why like any lazy person, that's why it sounded like tinny shit.
Right.
Where like you could get like orchestra sounds out of a Super NES.
No, I think it's the opposite. The Genesis had this like really nice quality to it. It was so warm. Like it felt,
I love Genesis sound.
Yeah.
But Jim, you like horrible shit.
Sir, how dare you? Just because I didn't cry at fucking Final Fantasy VI's opera scene.
Jim is a notorious Genesis fanboy, but I said it is funny. Like, yeah, if you look subjectively, anyone's gonna say Super NES is overall better, even if you prefer Genesis. Super NES is a better system. But like Jim said, it came out later. It had some advantages there, so it's just different. It's tough to compare.
I wouldn't even compare the games. I'm just talking about the sound. The sound of an NES, like of a Sega Genesis, like Toe Jam and Earl. The way they were able to hit that like slappy bass sound in it. You can't recreate that on any other system. You can't even do that today on any computer. I know that. That's science. I called someone.
Oh, dude, the bass and percussion you get out of a Genesis when done right is ridiculous.
Yeah, it sounds so good, and that's it. I don't have any. That's no hills I want to die on besides that.
Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, you can subjectively say the SNES is better than the Genesis, but you can
it's
also
got more all-timers.
But you can turn it around as a Sega boy and say the Dreamcast is the best system of all time.
Well, there we go. Then we're talking real games.
Yeah.
Talk about real stuff. Talk about Tony Hawk 3.
Yeah.
All right. Tell us more, Travis. Get into it.
So one interesting story was that when the SNES or the Super Famicom was released in Japan, there was a secret midnight shipment out of the Japanese factories. So there was actually intel from the police given to Yamauchi that the Yakuza was about to rob the trucks as they left the factory. Because they were like, this is a hot seller. The Yakuza's like, I love my pinky. I want to keep it. So I have to steal these trucks for my boss. So Yamauchi just decided a random date, and he oversaw the release of this midnight. Like basically the SNES just showed up in stores one day.
Wow.
And they paint this very anime scene of him like smoking cigarettes, watching all the trucks drive away from the factory at midnight, just like, oh yes, we will.
Once again, raining anime scene.
Yeah. This is going to be very good. Now, if you notice, I started with an Indian accent, so have fun.
So
if you use all the accents in once, you can't be canceled because it all cancels out.
It just makes me sound like an idiot, which true. But
so I'm not trying to beat a dead horse here or fucking dig it in with the Sega fans, but there was no debate that Nintendo won that generation, as Sega took up such a small portion of Nintendo's overall sales. Like, yes, it was troubling to Nintendo that they were taking up any sales because they had a monopoly, but they were clearly beat. And the mind share, Sonic was a big character. Obviously, it worried Nintendo, but in the early 90s, Mario was more recognizable than Mickey Mouse, because no one knows who Minnie Mouse is.
What the fuck's Minnie Mouse?
Minnie Mouse is this fucking bitch. That's like the green M&M. She's a whore.
Oh yeah, fucking green M&M whores.
Yeah, no, Mario was more recognizable than Mickey Mouse, and probably still is. I mean, I would argue that more kids would probably know who Mario is than Mickey Mouse. Who the fuck?
Yeah,
is
absolutely.
Mickey Mouse?
No one cares about Disney anymore, except weirdos.
Except Disney just owned everything else. Like we said, talking monopolies.
They had to buy everything. They had to buy other things to stay relevant. And you know what? They are still. I can't take that away from them. I don't have a bomb. But if I did, I have an idea.
Yeah, Sega was definitely like WCW in like the mid 90s when they took over for like 2 years with the NWO before WWF just took back over again. Okay. I was like, oh, this is scary for a little bit, but eventually the real one won out.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us. Now we don't have any sweating.
Yeah, but the real competition came from a blunder that came up straight from Yamauchi himself. This guy fucked up huge. And his arrogance would create a unstoppable competitor, and that started as a partnership.
Mm-hmm.
That would be.
I know where this is going.
That would be Sonus. Sony, not Sonos.
I thought we were going to talk about the rift between Japanese noodles and spaghetti.
And instant rice spaghetti.
Yeah.
But you learn something new every day on this
ramen
show, right?
and Chef Boyardee.
Right? I'm actually going to make ramen after this just because we're talking so much Japan.
Yeah. So way back in 1987, Yamauchi was thinking far beyond the 16-bit. Right? There's a Neo Geo came out, I think, not that long after. That was 32-bit. It's interesting because people our generation are still like, oh, that's 16-bit? No, that's 32-bit, dog. You know, like it was like it mattered. But he was thinking far beyond the 16-bit period, and he knew that disk-based systems were the thing of the future. Yamauchi was like, disk-based, and there was like a multimedia was like the buzzword back in the 90s, like early 90s. So like, now it's all like social media and whatever. Like back then it's like multimedia. So Nintendo contracted Sony. It was already making discs, right, for music and CD-ROMs and all that stuff. And he was like, hey, let's make Nintendo's first disc-based system. And we're not talking about 32-bit, we're talking about 64-bit, dog. We're gonna go way beyond. Maybe we'll do a 32-bit and then we'll go 64-bit. I don't even really understand bits, to be honest.
It's really
Can you guys
disgusting.
explain bits more? I just knew it was something at the playground that you'd be like, you heard about the Jaguar? It's 32
32 bits, yep.
and you can play Sonic and Mario on one screen, bro.
Yeah, I think what might help illustrate this, do either of you guys know what a PlayStation 5 is? Talking in bits.
We might dabble.
Okay.
It's a gazillion bits.
Yeah, how many bits is it?
Gazillion.
It's probably a word I don't even know.
Yeah.
It's a good number, though. Technology's like that.
It's a joke, but at the same time, yeah, you look at what's in it
It's
now.
700,000 floppy disks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn.
Well, like I said, the NES was 2,000 bytes of RAM. You know what I mean? Like your phone has like, I don't know, 1,000 times more than that. More than that, probably.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because we live in the future, and
Yeah,
we can
future,
see porn. We can see nipple hairs that they didn't know were there while they were even filming. Because the angles are weird.
Mm-hmm.
So
You see that one piece of toilet paper they didn't know was still stuck there.
yeah.
Damn
So
it,
they make this contract with Sony back in 1987. And remember, this is kind of before the whole real craze of the Nintendo comes out. And the way my source explained to me the game over was that Japanese contracts were not like, at least back in the 70s or in the 80s and 90s, Japanese contracts were not like American contracts. Whereas like American contract would have like 1,000 pages to cover their ass, right? Like everything written out, right? A Japanese contract was like, okay, we'll work together. Please sign here. You know what I mean? Like it was just like
Much simpler.
yeah,
An honor system, basically.
yeah, it's honor, right? It's like yeah, we're gonna help each other out. We're gonna be good business partners.
I think it's like my previously denounced people, the Jews, who really got those contracts going. And I said most of my family is Jews. I'm not anymore, but they're really thorough, and they're very good at contracts, and they just don't have those in the East.
no honor.
Maybe if they did, it would be different. Who knows?
There's no Minoru Dershowitzes over there.
Yeah.
Not a single one. Not a single one. Slavotsky might sound a little Jewish. It's not. It's halfway between, and you're off. That's it.
So the development of the Nintendo PlayStation begins. That's kind of weird to say. Nintendo PlayStation.
It's the best system.
Now, Yamauchi tried to nickel and dime Sony as much as they could. Now, remember, Sony is not a small company. They had existed for a long time. They had been working on records, record players, everything. Like they had existed. I don't know exactly when Sony started, but they definitely became a dominant force after the war. Maybe before. I don't know. I haven't looked into it.
They were right around, the mid-40s.
Mid-40s?
I'm almost positive is right at the mid-40s. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So they had grown their dominant force. This is one of those companies where like I wouldn't be surprised if there was like a Sony like lawnmower that we just never heard of.
For
right?
sure.
Like the Sony lawnmower. It's in Japan. So there was a lot of fighting back and forth about how much money Nintendo would make per disc because like Sony owned the disc making processes, but like Nintendo was used to this giant markup from their cartridges. So they were kind of like, well, we usually make this much from all of our discs. Like, dude, it's a piece of plastic. Like, you're not going to make that much money off of a piece of plastic.
I don't know.
And they also had
what's
some,
on it.
yeah. They also had some issues with piracy, right? Like, so they had the chip, and they're like, "How do we protect our disc?" And Sony's like, "I don't know. It's a fucking disc. It's a piece of plastic. It's not." Now, Yamauchi was so pissed at Sony over these talks, and he's like, Nintendo is the king, and he's used to just getting his ass licked from all these distributors and all this stuff. Like, I mentioned, if you had bad word with Nintendo, they just cut you off. But Yamauchi couldn't just cut off Sony. They were a big company. So Yamauchi started to secretly do talks with Sony's major European competitor, Philips. You might know them as the Philips Hue bulbs, right? They make light bulbs nowadays. They make other things too. They make my CPAP because I can't breathe. I'm too fat to breathe when I sleep.
How's that going?
Dude, it's great. Thank you, Philips, for keeping my life in my hands.
Keeping the light of my life and keeping me alive. Yeah. That's good. That's better than any video game system I've heard of.
Dude, it's one of my favorite systems.
Only technically, I will say that.
Dude, I watch it. I try to hit the high score of oxygen levels while I sleep. So Nintendo starts secretly working with Philips, which is like a big kind of backstabby thing. And also is taboo in Japan because Japanese companies like to work with Japanese companies. You don't go working with some Dutch idiots that make light bulbs, you know?
Yeah, it's just weird.
Yeah.
You don't just go blasting one off with Lexington Steel on the weekend.
Yeah.
You stick to your talent. It's a talent pool, very central.
Honor.
So at the 1991 CES, Sony unveiled their partnership with Nintendo, which was the Nintendo PlayStation, which was a disc adapter for the SNES. Crazy. It was kind of the same thing that Sega did with, what was it? What's that one called?
Sega CD.
Sega CD.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. The following day after the convention, Nintendo announced that they were working with Philips. Like, the next day, until like, oh, you heard at that show? The only video game convention? We aren't doing that. We're working with Philips. Fuck you, Sony.
Wow.
And this was Yamauchi's call, right? He's like, I want to fuck them over as much as possible.
Well, I mean, you guys hate him. I don't know if I would say that myself, but you guys were ready for that.
But Tom, have you ever seen the cursed videos of Zelda and the Mario games on Philips CDI? Have you ever seen them?
I've gotten drunk a few times and just watched those Philips Zelda games.
I can one-up you. I own a Philips CDI, and I own Hotel Mario, and we've done a review of it.
It's awful.
I forced Brian to play it.
And Jim is the ultimate, like, if he paid too much money for it, he'll find the good in it. And then I come along and play. I'm like, no, this is dog shit. He's like, but there's like a one good soundtrack after 30 levels. Come on. That makes up for the whole movie, the whole game.
So this is online. You guys did a YouTube video or something of a whole playthrough?
Not a whole play. We just did a review of the game itself. So, yeah, if you look up DBPG Hotel Mario review, you'll find us going through the game.
But Jim played through the whole entire thing, and he's like trying to convince me.
Right here,
he's like, he's trying to convince me. He's like, it's good, it's good. I was like, it's a game about opening and closing doors. How is that fucking good at all? And then I played it.
Isn't that Resident Evil, though?
No. Don't you dare. Don't you dare.
Oh, come on. Opening and closing doors. That's the majority of time you do. You watch the door open, you watch the door
That is building suspense, you son of a bitch.
That's like if you live in LA and you have an agoraphobic fear of earthquakes. That's the game for you. Keep the doors closed, God damn it. I need to keep the structural integrity up of this place.
I mean,
and if the Zelda games weren't $700 a piece at this point, I'd have them too.
They're $700 each.
They're a couple hundred each at this point. At least $300 to $400.
They're very funny looking,
Jim. Jim, I think you can go wait to go bomb the Dongos.
Yeah, right.
Just keep waiting. Yeah.
Now he's dead. Good.
So yeah, the Philips CDI, that garbage, those garbage games that came out, that was what Nintendo got. Basically, their whole dream of becoming a disc-based system was crushed, and Hiroshi kind of just doubled down on how terrible CDs were from this point on, because he got burned. Well, he tried to burn Sony, and then he got burned by fucking them over. He just doubled down. Was like, dude, no one wants to play a game on CD, dude. That's stupid. Why would you do that?
CDs for listening to music, like CC Music Factory. That's kind of gay. You're not gay, are you? That's weird. If you like CDs, maybe it's gay. I don't know.
Yeah, you don't want to be an F store, don't you?
Yeah, right. This is the '90s. That's the top.
That's common speech. That's what you get called when you go to the register at like Walmart.
We'll be right back after these messages. So stick around for the man show. Exactly. This is perfect.
So the Sony PlayStation was released in 1994, and as I mentioned, Yamauchi changed his tune about the disc-based systems. And now he started saying how gamers don't want better graphics or loading times. Like, I don't want better graphics and loading times. They want to play games.
It's kind of true, though.
You idiot.
That's actually why I bought an N64. I hated
Jim, you didn't have a choice. You were too young and you didn't have a job. Shut the fuck up.
No, I asked specifically. They're like, which one do you want? I said N64. I hate loading times.
I actually asked for an N64 too. My parents were like, "You're 15. This came out 5-6 years ago or something. No, 10 years. Yeah, it's a weird relationship I had."
I asked for an N64, and my parents gave me a Dreamcast, and it was the best decision
way
ever
better.
My parents made. Yamauchi called PlayStation fans the people who dye their hair brown and hang around Tokyo's Akihabara district. I guess dyeing your hair brown.
It's
is
like
weird.
today's dyeing your hair blue.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They just
or like he used to be, long fingernails and hair down.
Right? Yeah, it's kind of fucked up because, like, dude, you were doing the same fucking thing back in the day. And then after Nintendo's old licensee, Square, made Final Fantasy VII, which was supposed to come out on Nintendo, but basically the disc-based system could hold a lot more information than any type of cartridge. So Square was like, okay, we're going to go with Sony. Yamauchi called RPG players he called them depressed gamers that like to sit alone in dark rooms and play slow.
Oh, he hated JRPGs. He said, like, between that and he also mentioned the exact quote was basically the only reason, like, Western, more specifically American audiences didn't go because they only care about violent video games. So it's like he just kept doubling down on shitting on all of his fans. It's like, fuck you. If you don't like my stuff, too bad.
Well, hold on.
Yeah. I'm spitting a lot of facts right now. I got to be honest.
Yeah, I got to ask. Like, I've played a couple RPGs. My sentiments fall very in line with him with the JRPG thing. You guys play games. Mm-hmm. You guys have fun with all kinds of games.
We're not JRPG fans.
No?
No.
So it rings home. Because you guys have life in you. You have color in your cheeks. It looks like you enjoy anything.
Yeah. But guys, have you gotten on the Elden Ring? I mean, my Elden Ring is gaped right now, dude.
Jim,
I'm
a couple hours in. I'm not as far in as I want to be right now because I haven't been home for like a couple days now. But I actually want to just take a day off work and just sit down for like 10 hours straight and just keep grinding. Like,
dude, that is the most Japanese RPG I've played in a long time. So you have to finger your butthole in order to join your friends.
Elden Ring is just the perfect example of peer pressure, which Jim was accustomed to. Like, why did Jim started smoking?
It is
Jim started smoking. Oh, this girl's smoking. I like, so I'm gonna do that too. So Elden Ring, everyone's playing it. So now I gotta play it too. It's like, Elden Ring is the perfect example of like everyone who I know who has zero interest in JRPGs or anything of that nature. They're like, well, everyone likes it. I must try it. And they're like, oh, I don't know what the fuck I'm getting into.
I'll do you one better. my parents were not keen on video games. They really were not into the idea. So they did get me a Game Boy, and it was the year before Pokemon came out. And not knowing what Pokemon was and everyone talking about it, I asked for Pokemon for my birthday. And that was the only gift I got besides, tchotchkes. Fuck Pokemon. Fuck anything Pokemon related. Oh my God. I was just walking around in a baseball hat.
And collecting animals.
Yeah, I was just like, this game fucking sucks.
Tom, don't you want to catch a Mankey boy? Don't you want to catch a Snorlax?
I don't want to catch anything. And I fell for it years later when I played Ni no Kuni, because I was like, oh, Hayao Miyazaki, he's an art. Oh, forget art. Art is stupid and dead. It's just a fucking game with weird Pokemon. Worse Pokemon. So yes, I
and
know
more
that
cutscenes that you have to watch and sit through and can't skip.
Yeah, so I don't fuck.
You gotta
with
talk to the Pokemons.
I don't fuck with anything Japanese at all, ever.
All right, so Yamauchi's hatred of discs was twofold, and like I said, it was mainly just because he was butthurt about Sony, basically just calling his bluff and fucking them over. But also, the disc was a lot easier to be pirated, as I mentioned. It's like, oh, it's just a piece of plastic. How are you going to pirate that? Blah, blah, blah. So while the competitors were moving into the disc era, which the developers were way into, you could hold a lot bigger sizes. There was less risk because it's just a piece of plastic. Nintendo was working on their next system. But before they could do that, they released the Virtual Boy. Now,
Sick.
Yeah, this is you guys, I'm sure you guys have used the Virtual Boy. Like, I feel like I'm looking through playing about an hour of Virtual Boy right now, in the fact that I can't see anything and my room is spinning.
Yeah, what do you call it? I did a bid back at like Blockbuster back in the day, going back to Blockbuster. Like, they had the demo unit there. Like, you'd sit there and you'd play, they always had tennis set up, and you play it for 10 minutes and be like, oh, this kind of sucks, and then you never touched it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like watching your own mother give birth several times.
Yeah, I had the rich buddy who had a Neo Geo console and the Virtual Boy. I played it and I was like, well, this is fucking terrible. So, yep, nope.
Yeah.
Fuck him.
So the Virtual Boy was pretty much just like we need to put out a system while we work towards our 16-bit system, which would eventually become the Nintendo 64. And it was the brainchild of our boy Gunpei that we talked about before. Mm-hmm. The guy who invented the Game Boy. Now, it was so bad, the release of this Virtual Boy, because, again, you play Virtual Boy and, you hurt after a while. Like, you can't just, it's not like jumping into the metaverse where you feel better and you don't have legs because no one wants legs anymore. You play Virtual Boy for more than 30 minutes, your vision hurts. Mm-hmm. So the release was so bad that Yamauchi basically let go Gunpei, who he essentially started Nintendo that we know.
He made a Game Boy.
Well, no, he made the Game Boy, but he also helped develop the NES. He, I think, was responsible for Metroid, all of these really big
Ultra Arms.
He did the Mario games for the Game Boy because Miyamoto had no part in them. So he did Mario. They gave him Mario for the Game Boy too.
Oh, no shit.
Yep.
Yeah, it was basically this guy Gunpei and Miyamoto that were responsible for Nintendo.
Oh, yeah.
If it wasn't for those two dudes, you wouldn't have Nintendo as you know it today. Mm-hmm. So Yamauchi pretty much Japanese forced retires him, sort of. There was no firing. It was just maybe you should go. And he's like, oh, maybe I should retire. Not really. I don't want to. And he put him on this bunk system. He knew it was going to fail. A few months later, about a year later, Gunpei was hit by a car and died.
Yep. He made the Wonder Swan, and then after that he got hit by a car and dead.
Yeah, which is kind of shitty.
Car?
Probably a Ford F-150. It was the last nuke we dropped on Japan.
We can only sell a very small amount of cars over there. like to compensate for dropping a bomb. So like every American car over there is a luxury car. They can sell whatever they want over here.
Have you guys ever seen the commercials for the Mercedes Nintendo Mario commercials?
No.
Just do yourself a favor. You can do yourself a favor. Do some Patreon content on those boys. It is probably the most disgusting thing I've ever seen.
Consider it done.
It's really fun.
Yeah, because I think they released like Mercedes cars in
Mario Kart 8.
Mario Kart. Yeah, but there was like a weird video commercial. Check that out. Anyway, that's a side note. Nintendo releases the Nintendo 64, which was a cartridge-based system in a time where disc-based systems were the norm, right?
Yep.
You had the PlayStation. You had eventually the Xbox, right? All that.
The
stuff.
Sega Saturn was
Sega
the same
Saturn.
time. Also disc.
And Yamauchi was basically just butthurt about Sony, so he was just like, "Of course, all of our developers are gonna love working on this cartridge-based system where we can fuck them in the ass every day." And of course, all of the developers were like, no, I don't want to make anything on the Nintendo 64 because why would I take the risk? I can fit more shit onto a Sony disc. So Nintendo loses most of their licensees. Yeah. So moving on, we have the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox. Yamauchi said, like, there's no way that, like, the Xbox was ever going to be able to understand the gaming industry, which was dumb. And then one of I think the stupidest lines that he ever said, only people who do not understand the video game business will advocate the release of next generation machines when people are not interested in cutting edge technologies.
Because people never want new. Yeah. They never want the new thing.
Even though he
knew
Nintendo needed to get into new technology to grow.
Right.
Details.
It's a real hate your dad kind of sentiment.
Yeah. And also, I mean, you guys are retro gamers, but you have to admit the majority of people that play video games just want to see the most realistic graphics and the most, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter if the game is dog shit. If it has great graphics,
casual gamers, it's like the frustration of any ex-girlfriend, I'll say, if she refused to watch a movie because it was in black and white or something like that, like stupid shit like that. It's like, there's a mentality, like, go with newer. Like, yeah, we want the best graphics, best sound. There are people who would look at the NES nowadays who'd be like, is this for real? Like, is that a joke? Like, my iPhone could do better. You know, and that's unfortunately the majority of folks.
Right.
Because we still let people vote. I don't know the alternative. I'm not that well learned, but I know it's weird. It's weird.
I just know that there's this one amendment between the 18th and the 20th that was a really bad idea. So,
So Yamauchi would finally fold on his disc-based systems when the Nintendo released the Nintendo GameCube. But it used mini discs, which again was like basically just a piracy protection thing.
Yep.
And most third-party developers were like, why? Like, I had to fit my game on fucking 8 discs or whatever, like, just to play ridiculous. A game. You know? And let's close up this annoying man.
Yeah, how does this guy fucking die, Travis? How does this fucking dude do it? I'm tired of this.
So on the 24th of May, 2002, Yamauchi stepped down as president of Nintendo, and he was succeeded by Satoru Iwata, the friendly man that hung out with Reggie. That's all I know him as.
Beloved.
Yeah.
The guy from HAL Labs, basically maker of Kirby and Smash and all that shit. And they're like, hey, you're president now.
Yeah, I just remember him as like the Japanese 5th member of Weezer. That's kind of what I picture.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. He had that middle part going on. He was just always smiling.
Just this little programming dork who wanted to just make games that people would enjoy playing.
Is this guy still in there?
No, unfortunately,
he's dead.
Yeah, he died.
He could be a new one, another roast.
I don't know if he could be a roast. He just seemed like a happy little boy. Like I was
gonna say that would be a ballsy move though,
yeah.
for the Nintendo fans to actually roast Satoru Iwata, because he's basically like god tier status, and there's almost no dirt at all.
Yeah, he's honestly like a happy cherub.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll make stuff up. I'm Googling him, and my prejudices are kicking in, so I don't see any problem with making stuff up.
So he hires this guy. Now, Yamauchi probably would have asked his son-in-law, the guy who started Nintendo of America, but his son-in-law retired a few months before Yamauchi because he just was like, nope, I don't want to ever get involved in this again. I did it. We're good. The Congress brought me in to fucking yell at me. Like, I'm good. Mm-hmm. He's still alive, by the way. Yamauchi was the chairman of the Nintendo board of directors. He left the board in 2005 due to his age. Now, he also refused to accept his retirement pension, but at the same point, he became the richest man in Japan after the launch of the Wii, which, because that was so popular and such a craze, and also kind of continued his kind of idea of it doesn't need to be the most powerful system, because like the Wii had SD, it wasn't,
it was just
HD.
an overclocked GameCube.
Yeah.
They kind of just like sped up a GameCube a little bit, and that's the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it was good though, because you were able to be fit and have the thing going.
Tom,
You could play bowling with grandma.
Yeah, exactly.
Tom, I know I've always made fun of you because of this, and I always bring it up, but I always loved when we played the WarioWare for the Wii, and it was like, all right, shave. And then you held up the Wiimote and just like started to shave on your face.
Yeah, because I thought I was in the future, but apparently Japan's a fucking bunch of charlatans, and they couldn't really figure out the shave. Okay? Yes, yeah, I had an embarrassing moment playing WarioWare. Who hasn't?
I've never embarrassed myself playing a game, ever.
So, on September 19th, 2013, at the age of 85, Yamauchi died in the hospital following complications of pneumonia. Nintendo released a statement that its staff members were mourning the loss of their former president. Maybe not so much. I mean, I don't know.
85, that's pretty young for Japan.
Yeah, right there.
Actually,
How old was Master Roshi? Like 250?
Something like that.
Something like that.
Fucking
Still going, and he got stronger with age.
Yeah. The Kamehameha.
Yeah, he's fucking fighting Frieza somehow. It's like, wait a second.
And that is our boy, Hiroshi Yamauchi. We didn't hit a lot of the checkpoints of like cousin fucking or like boy touching. But this man was just like, look, he said that he was going to make a game console, a toy for children. So even if you think video games are more than just, I know Tom thinks video games are for children, toy people, right? Yeah. But if you took it as like, say if he was the Willy Wonka, right, making candy and toys and treats, he's the most grumpy boy you could think of to be that man.
Mm-hmm.
But you just compared it like, well, think of it like this, like, you got one child's toy, pretend it's child's food.
Like a meatloaf?
That fucking analogy. Yeah. No, like candies, like Willy Wonka's.
Mm-hmm.
Guys,
Golden Zelda cartridge?
I just sucked all the air out of the room by trying to compare a bad analogy to something else. I don't know.
Look, I think video games are an art form for sure. And this guy, the one thing I will say about him is that he pretty much let his developers like Shigeru Miyamoto do what they wanted. He one of the things that he said was that like, the developers are artists. They can do what they want, but then he let them do what they want and put deadlines and then shit all over them when they brought something in. So without giving them direction.
I think it's impressive that he was such like a wacko businessman that like his weird business decisions were still like more interesting than like cousin fucking and kid touching. We're like, he did this shit too, but let's tell you about these goddamn lockout cartridges.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's fascinating. The only thing I give him credit for is being ballsy enough to just say the stupidest statements possible. Like him in a modern culture would never like the way he's shitting on fans so openly. Like I said, that shit would never fly. So it's the bull in the china shop. Like, he was stuck in his ways, but as today still proves, people still ate it all up. So it's like, he wasn't wrong in things he said, but you listen to it, you're like, wow, how could people still support him? We sure did.
Right.
We sure did.
Would not want to work for this man.
No.
Or be in his family, by the way. I mean,
fuck yeah.
It's interesting. I wish I knew more information about his like personal life, but again, there's only so many resources in English. Maybe there's more in Japanese, but
I want to know
like
what his cousins
cagey.
did.
Yeah, it's very cagey culture. So
I feel like this guy would do really well today, not based on how he, like, if he wasn't working with Nintendo and he was with another game company, like if he was with EA or something, or like, I don't know, putting out the same Call of Duty every year, like that would be good for this guy.
Yeah.
Because Travis, you said before, video games are art. I disagree with that only on the basis of video games can be art, but most of them are not.
yeah, oh, okay, I agree with that.
We've said that a lot, actually.
Yeah.
Like,
I feel like we've discussed this on the show before, is that I feel like that's just art in general. Like, I think Andy Warhol's crap is not art, but people call it art.
it's not.
It's just a man, stamping a soup can on things.
Yeah, and I don't like art anymore because of these things. I've come to these realizations that like there is no art anymore. It's just shit. It's garbage, and it's money and expression. Everything else is out the window.
And 50 years from now, someone with a magazine will think like one like piece of crap is like good, so they'll like prop it up, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, this guy was an underrated genius.
Yeah,
and we at the time we're like, oh, this guy sucks.
Yeah, that's true.
It's gonna be Jake Paul.
That's overlooked too. Like, especially in the game world, you get all the, oh, look at this overlooked game.
The retrospective, yep.
Yeah, that oh my god, look at this undiscovered gem, this hidden gem. Yeah. I hate that term. Yeah. The fucking, look at this hidden gem. It's hidden because it sucks.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not a fucking gem. Yeah, its value is still dog shit. Yeah, it's not like I bust Jim's balls, but like, well, he'll say he has a Philips CDI. He'll be like, this game's actually okay for a Philips CDI, but I'm like, but that's still like one of the worst consoles ever. So it's still dog shit in the pantheon of great games. So like, you can't even hold it close to the light. So there is a metric to it. And it's funny because we talked about the Nintendo seal of quality. There was 700 and some odd games on the NES, whatever the number is. There's a lot of absolute dog shit games on the NES. Like, I'd say super quality, you're probably at about 100. Best case, and that's being very generous.
Right.
So there's plenty of dog shit even on the NES, even with their quality seal.
What I want to say is that, like, also, like, as crazy as the Nintendo sales were when I went over it and talked about it, the original PlayStation sold, I think it was the most amount of systems.
It was over 100 million.
It was the first over 100 million, yeah. And I think there was like 10,000 games on it or something like that. Yeah. And most of them are crap, but at the same time, they were able to put out games.
Bangers.
Yeah, some of them are getting bangers. The shotgun approach, and sometimes the shotgun approach works.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Sony's won every generation since they've come out, so.
Yeah.
Yep.
Dude, you know who's going to win next generation? Zuck, because I don't want my legs anymore. Tom, do you have the hacksaw next time I come to New York? Are you taking these babies off? I'm going
to save you a lot of money on that flight. Yeah. All right. Look, guys, thank you for coming on. I feel like this conversation we're having right now, like the subjective natures of games and like the values behind them and all the art stuff, it's very much stuff you cover on Drink a Beer, Play a Game. So anyone listening to this, go listen to your show. Jim, Brian, tell us more about the show real quick before we go. Give us all the stuff. Give us Patreon stuff, all the plugs.
Yeah.
And we'll wrap this
up.
up.
The easiest thing, we like to review games and also pair specialty beers with it. We have our weekly Power Hour podcast where we talk games, beer, just general news. interviewing folks like you all, who we always appreciate coming on our show as well. And we throw out top 10s and top 6s. Jim, you can spit out where we can be found.
Yep. So youtube.com/ just search for Drink a Beer, Play a Game. Twitter @A Beer and a Game. Drink a Beer, Play a Game on Facebook and Instagram, and patreon.com/Drink a Beer, Play a Game, where you can get bonus content like, Patreon exclusive videos. You can interact with the podcast. You can get game review requests and bonus episodes, all kinds of good shit there. So, or our website, drinkabeerplaygame.com, where that's where we put up more of like the straight up beer reviews, because like beer reviews are rough in like video format, so we'll just do like text ones over there and some random articles here and there and all that other shit. So, and that's where our merch is. So buy a t-shirt.
Do you guys have a thong on your store?
Not yet.
Not yet.
But we will.
Okay. See, I want like a Borat that I can wear around Portland. That's a normal dress in Portland. So.
Portland
We
uniform.
can make it happen.
Okay, cool. Travis will be the model for it.
All right, yeah,
yeah.
thank you guys so much for coming on. Really enjoyed having you guys on to talk about this video game titan grumpy boy.
Oh, yeah, thank you so much for having
Appreciate
us.
it, guys.
It was a great time.
It was awesome.
Appreciate you sticking around, tolerating all this stuff. And that goes for you too, audience. If you like the show, go to patreon.com/roastmortemcast. Give us your money. That's it. We promise you nothing in return. And with that, I will say, Danky Shane.
Yeah, Danky Shane, show this to all of your Sega friends and be like, look, this guy sucks so much. Even though I was kind of like, Sega lost.
This guy sucked and you still lost.
Thank you, Shane.
Thankums.